Hello, world. What is up? It's your boy, Tommy on the spot. Let me clear my throat a little bit here. I'm excited. Thank you so much for checking us out here on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. This isn't the Wrestling Potpourri. This isn't an unboxing. This isn't a video on location. This is the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast, our first podcast since the beginning of September. I've been in and out trying to do things with you guys and have a little fun in the process. But unfortunately not able to do one of these for a while. But today, we're able to make it happen. We're on the road to one of my favorite pay-per-views, the WWE Survivor Series, in just under 2 weeks. And I just love it, man. I mean, this is one of the big four shows, and today's a special treat. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. When I first started the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast, this was one of the shows I wanted to get into. And I've done a good amount of research on this. I'm excited to get into it with you guys. And for the next almost 3 hours, we are going to get into it. It is a long show. So what I'm going to do, and I'll talk about all the stuff I was going to talk about, but I want to start the show off. I want to get everyone going on the right track, on the right path here. So what we're going to do is we are going to turn on the show. We're going to get it started right away. I know there's some folks who want to get ready, get settled for UFC 230 tonight. The big match, Derek Lewis against Daniel Cormier, and my boy Chris Weidman, right out of the University of Hofstra, which is a school I went to. He's on the card as well. It's a big card. I'm excited for it. I'm going out to watch it. So before we get out there, though, I'm going to be watching Survivor Series 1996 with you, a big show from Madison Square Garden, and I'm ready to get into it, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. Let's turn it on. Let's crank it up, and we'll chat as we go along. Now, if you guys are grabbing yourself a beverage beforehand, you know how we do here on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. Normally, we have a beverage or two. You also notice, by the way, a little different setup from the first time around when I was doing these. I'm not sweating in a small room anymore. Instead, I'm chilling on the couch. I'm watching the show, and I got it up on the big screen here, so there's no little computer deal here. This won't go out. The feed will not go out. We'll be ready to rock here. And the hope here is to do one of these now every week and to get the ball rolling on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. Hopefully you guys will join me there. If you are joining me live, the live chat is open. Let me know your thoughts on the show as you watch along. If you can't tune in live, though, no worries. This will be up on the channel immediately following, and you'll be able to check us out right then and there. So if you only care about my thoughts about the Undertaker's big return against Mankind, or maybe the Stone Cold Bret Hart match, you can sync it up with the show when I say press start on that, and we'll be able to get moving. So let's get moving. Let's get this show on the road. I'm going to get started right now. Now, I've already done the whole deal with the TV 14 rating, whatever it is, PVPG. So I'm ready to start it. I have it on the screen right now. It's paused at 000. So let's start the show together. I'm going to give you a 5-second countdown. I'll let you get going with that, and then we'll go from there. If you are grabbing yourself a beverage, feel free. I have a couple sitting here myself. As always, though, of course, if you guys are driving somewhere to watch UFC 230, do not drink while we watch this show if we're watching live, especially if you're going to be getting a ride somewhere, though, like myself. Friends coming over, they're going to be picking me up, and so I'm going to, have a little pregame bevy, if you will, before we get started and drink along with you guys here while we watch along. And what am I drinking tonight? I'm drinking a Harpoon Dunkin' Coffee Porter. I'm a huge coffee fan. Saw this in the store, so I picked up one of these. I'll be switching over in a little while, and we'll talk about that when I do, after I knock this one down. But I figured, why not try a Dunkin' Coffee Porter? And the fine folks of Harpoon Brewery, a brewery I've visited before, great stuff. So let's get into it. It's at 000 right now, and we're going to get started with Survivor Series 1996, and I'll talk about everything related to this show as we watch. Let's do it. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and go.
The Big Apple is the city that never sleeps. And this weekend, it's as if every New Yorker had consumed an extra cup of caffeine. The World Wrestling Federation took over the world's greatest city across the radio waves, on television, and in print. And last night, thousands flocked to the Marriott Marquis in Times Square for the annual World Wrestling Federation Hall of Fame banquet. But tonight, it's the main event. Tonight, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels defends the title against the dangerous and unpredictable Psycho Sid. Tonight, Living legend Bret the Hitman Hart returns to the squared circle to battle the menacing Stone Cold Steve Austin. Tonight, The Undertaker looks to finally lay Mankind and Paul Bearer to rest. And tonight, who will survive the grueling Survivor Series elimination matches? Live from New York, the World Wrestling Federation presents the 1996 Survivor Series.
Pretty awesome video package there, man. That doesn't get you excited. I don't know what does. For those who are not watching along, they showed the whole deal there of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels doing a, seems like a little radio show together. They were both live on there. Showed Shawn Michaels on Live with Regis and I guess Kathy Lee back in '96. They also have a bunch of different things going on in New York, and obviously the Hall of Fame banquet. We're going to get into all of that, especially the Hall of Fame banquet, a little bit later on, and it should be cool, man. So let's get into it. And it seems like British Bulldog, Owen Hart, they're starting off with the Survivor Series matches. Now, this show was really all about three major cogs, three major matches that they were building up. Number one, world title match. You had Shawn Michaels defending the title against Psycho Sid. That was your main event. But probably the biggest thing about this show was going to be that the return of Bret Hart to face Stone Cold Steve Austin. This was Bret's big return to the company. We're going to get into a whole bunch more about Bret's return, what happened, what almost didn't happen, and everything else to that extent. Live chat is open here, so if you guys do want to chime in on the chat, and we'll have some fun as we go along. So you'll also notice, by the way, that British Bulldog and Owen Hart's music was the only one played. With them are the new Rockers, the new rechristened Rockers, team of Marty Jannetty and Leif Cassidy, who I've watched all the build-up, or at least all the Raws in build-up of this particular show. And there was absolutely no mention. The New Rockers were not on a single Raw. And the worst part about this is really the first time, other than a brief mention on one of those Survivor Series deals Doc Hendrick used to do, where he'd just kind of go through all the matches, that we've ever heard of Doug Furnas and Phil LaFon. Here they are. If you hear that awful music in the background, that is the dub over of the Godwin's theme. For whatever reason, Don't Go Messing with the Country Boy is just not on there. And so it's rough. Eesh, sounds just absolutely brutal. You hear that? It sounds terrible. But in any event, yeah, Phil LaFon, Doug Furnas. I'm going to turn this down just a little on the back feed. Hang in there one split second. All right, a little bit lower there on the volume. It's just insane and ridiculous. So yeah, so the Godwins are here. Don't Go Messing with the Country Boy, I guess, is no longer owned by WWE. So every time you see the Godwins, you'll see them coming out to this really bad dubbed over version of Don't Go Messing with the Country Boy. And they'll be dancing around and do-si-doing to like this really bad canned music. It's terrible. So at this point, this is back on November the 17th, 1996. So 22 years ago in just a couple of weeks. And honestly, Survivor Series of this year, if I'm not mistaken, also falls on actually, I think the 18th, right? Because November 4th is tomorrow, so yeah, the 18th. And we'll be able to get you hyped for all that in the coming weeks. But today we figured, why not start with Survivor Series 96? Now, like I said, and like I spoke about, when I first started the Watchalong Wrestling podcast, I've had like those 10 shows. Most of them are shows I've gone to where like I wanted to relive my experiences with you guys, chat about all those things there, here and there, about what it was like to be there live, what it was like to see these shows live. But Survivor Series 96, man, that's right up there on like my top shows, really of all time, like top 10 shows that I'd love to go back here, rewatch, because not only did you get those three big matches, and I was going through them before, Shawn Michaels defending the title against Psycho Sid, you got the return of Bret Hart against Stone Cold Steve Austin, and you've got the return of The Undertaker. Now, he's had a much shorter return, which we'll get into when that match happens, against Mankind. Those were like your three big promoted matches, but you also have the Survivor Series elimination traditional matches that we've spoken about. For those of you guys that don't know, when I was a kid, the one thing that I'd love to go back and do when thinking about like wrestling shows was to go back and watch a Royal Rumble. To me, nothing beats a good old Royal Rumble. I can't wait till January because it gives me an opportunity to go back with you guys and watch 4 Royal Rumble shows back to back to back to back and have fun doing it. But other than a Rumble, and Marty's lost a couple steps, has he not? Ooh, that's good. Pretty stuff there. So what you guys, you know, in looking back at the Survivor Series, though, that the Survivor Series matches, the traditional Survivor Series matches, were right behind the Rumble for me as matches to go back and watch and enjoy. I've probably seen Survivor Series 1987 to 1996 about 100 times. And I feel like this was the final Survivor Series. Now, I know they've had Survivor Series traditional matches through the years, but this, for whatever reason, this show felt like this was the last time they did the traditional old format of like those Survivor Series teams in there and elimination style doing their thing, and everybody, you know, with teams of 5 strive to survive, obviously now teams of 4, and then one guy gets eliminated and it keeps going until all members of one team have been eliminated. To me, there's nothing better than that, going back and watching those old matches. Even though these matches definitely seem thrown together, Owen and the Bulldog are still very much at this point in with Camp Cornette, and leading up to this show, they had absolutely no interaction with the Godwins. The aforementioned Furnace and LaFon were never even mentioned on WWE TV, and instead they've been actually in a bit of a feud with Sid and Shawn Michaels, and they're actually kind of the catalyst of what broke off Shawn and Sid's de facto friendship that had been going on since July of '96 into November of '96, at least. Someone's here. Mike, just recently watched this. Love the Hart Austin match. Absolutely. Michael saying hello in the live chat. And Hart Austin match is great. My favorite of the Hart Austin series is actually the Survivor Series match. I think it's better than the WrestleMania 13 match. We'll see here if it holds up to this day. But Hart and Austin are about as good as they get. And we're going to talk a lot about Bret Hart once we get to that match. Really, really good stuff there. But thanks for chiming in, Michael, and jumping in on that live chat. You'll see here, Leaf Cassie, that is Al Snow. Al was still trying to find his way here in a variety of different things. Al was obviously Avatar at one point. Al was a couple different deals here and there in WWE, and he's still trying to find his way. This New Rockers thing is not working at all. The Leaf Cassie name comes from 1970s teen artists. I want to say David Cassidy and Leif Garrett. Don't quote me on that. I'm not too sure who either of those guys are, but I do think that's what the play on the name is. He'll soon be out, and we have in the archives here, we've gone and watched King of the Ring 98, where he's now returned to WWE as a super over character with Head doing his old thing. But at the same time, he's not found his way here. He's going to eventually, this won't pan out, and he will actually take this Leif Cassidy character briefly over to ECW before being rechristened as Al Snow and doing his whole thing with Head, and then becoming getting a bit of a name for himself into becoming to transitioning into the biggest run of his career. Owen and the Bulldog are so good here. They're having great matches on Raw basically every single week. They are the tag champs. And it's a shame that it doesn't work out here with Furnace and LaFon. You're going to see Furnace and LaFon a little later in this match. They came over from Japan, accomplished careers in Japan, and it just unfortunately never takes off. And this actually, not only is this the show kind of returns. We talked about this is Bret Hart's in-ring return. This is the Undertaker's in-ring return. But this is also the show of debuts. Each one of these 3 Survivor Series matches has a debut in it. This first match here, we have the Doug Furnace, Phil LaFon. A little bit later on, we're going to be seeing Flash Funk in the ring, doing his thing. And then, obviously, at the end of the night, we're going to see the debut of Rocky Maivia, known probably more so to you guys as The Rock. But, that being said, nobody really had hype packages. Flash Funk was, like, never really mentioned. He was mentioned just on the show or two prior to Survivor Series on Raw. In the video, in just like his graphic showing up for his match. Doug Furnace, Phil LaFon were not mentioned at all. not at all hyped until the last show beforehand, just quickly mentioned in the graphic. And Rocky Maivia, despite them saying this is his debut, actually was on a couple of Raws. On a really big Raw, which we'll get into a little bit later on in more detail when we talk about the Bret Hart Stone Cold match. When Bret Hart announces he's coming back to WWE television, I want to say this is on the October, I know this was on the October 21st Raw taping from Fort Wayne, Indiana. I don't know when the show actually aired, but I was reading through some old Wrestling Observer newsletters earlier, and it was one of these deals that it was, was able to do that.
Those 3 years experience for free. I just don't think set well with it. That business will pick up here. Oh, he knows what's going on.
By the way, if you don't know the Godwins, that's Henry Godwin in the ring right now. Henry O. Godwin, shortened down to Hog. And Phineas I. Godwin, his partner, shortened down to Pig. This is a strange time for WWE. They don't really know what they want to be right now. They have been a kid-friendly product basically since the early 90s. So you still have things like Hog Farmers, Karate Fighters tournaments, but they're about to start the transition into the kind of Attitude Era, better match quality type deal that they do going through. Here we go. And the Godwins, they're managed by WWE Hall of Famer, basically, WWE Hall of Famer Hillbilly Jim. In my opinion, the absolute worst of all of the Hall of Fame matches, of the Hall of Fame speeches, his earlier this year. It was one of the longest. It went on forever, and I just felt that he took up way too much time. And while I always love to see the Hall of Famers take up as much time as they want, I feel like Hillbilly Jim just went on and on and on and didn't speak too much about anything other than what he was doing. By the way, this was also during the time period where WWE was promoting the WWE was in the process of promoting the free-for-all. Basically, the free-for-all was one of these deals where you can tune in early on the preview channel, and rather than it just being a sort of like a preview for the show, they'd actually give you a match, so get you kind of whet your appetite, I guess, prior to everything else that was going on. So they'd give you that, and they'd show everything going on, and they'd give you at least one match. Before this particular show, the preview match on the free-for-all was actually a traditional Survivor Series match, and I'll read this off for you guys right now. The traditional Survivor Series match was, let's see here, I'm pulling up right now, the free-for-all match at the team of Aldo Montoya, Portuguese Man o' War, now known to you guys, probably better known, rather, as Just Incredible. Team captain Bart Gunn, Bob Holly, and the real Jesse James, also known now as the Road Dogg, defeated the team of the Sultan, probably best known as Rikishi, Salvatore Sincere. I don't know if he's best known as Salvatore Sincere or Tom Brandi, but he is who he is. Justin Hawk, Bradshaw, and Billy Gunn. Obviously, Bradshaw went on to be JBL. Billy Gunn went on to be Badass Billy Gunn, member of DX and the New Age Outlaws. So, good stuff. Very, very good stuff. Sorry there, guys. Trying to do something here. But yeah, it's very, very cool. So that happened on the pre-show. I was trying my best to find that match so I could have watched it. It's not available anywhere. It's one of those things I feel like WWE really should do their due diligence a bit in having this be something that people can watch before the show. Because I'm a huge continuity nerd. If I'm watching a show, I'm trying to watch the pre-show. Even if I go to watch a pay-per-view late at night, I'll try to my best to watch the pre-show and the pre-show matches, even though I know 9 times out of 10 they don't have much to offer. But I would definitely go back and watch the Todd Pettengill hype packages and everything else. So see Doug Furness, Phil LaFon, they're in there. I'm going to actually try to pull up the Wrestling Observer newsletter from Survivor Series of 1996. You guys can go and subscribe to the Wrestling Observer newsletter on f4wonline.com. I cannot put them over enough. They do a really, really great job, and Dave Meltzer is basically the godfather of wrestling news and the entire Wrestling Observer. Well, not the entire Wrestling Observer newsletter, but a good portion of them are there, and certainly everything up until, I think, about 2001 now. They're up on the site, and everything post-merger back in 2009 is also up there. So, yeah, definitely check them out if you get a chance. So, let's see here. So, what Dave Meltzer had to say. Let's see. All right. So Dave actually really liked this match. And I mean, a lot of people make the joke about Dave Meltzer loving Japanese wrestling. Was a big fan, obviously, of Doug Furnas and Phil LaFon. By the way, if you're wondering what happens with Doug Furnas and Phil LaFon, if these guys just totally seem like, you know, who the hell are they? They do an awesome job in this match, and then they have about one other match on Raw. Then they're gone for about an entire calendar year until showing up on with the Hart Foundation at Survivor Series 97, and then they are never seen again. At least not in WWE. So they don't really have a great run, despite having a really solid debut. Phil LaFon is actually still alive. I had thought both these guys had passed away. I know Doug Furnas had passed away, but Phil LaFon is actually still alive, at least according to the site I'm looking at here. Yeah, unfortunately, Furnas died in 2012. He was only 52 years old. That's terrible. But they really look good here. In my opinion, they really get the show going on the right way here. Look at that. Vince McMahon, what was that? Vince McMahon, no shame in the fact. And by the way, if you listen to the commentary on this show, which hopefully you're listening to my commentary on the show, but if you watch this, if you listen to the commentary on this show, Vince McMahon does a really great job in. So Vince McMahon and JR are kind of feuding here. This is after JR got fired the first time. And he's back with the company now. He brought Diesel and Razor Ramon back, but obviously it was the fake Diesel, fake Razor Ramon. Brought them back, and he's cranky now. The weeks leading up to Raw, he's not a part of the announce team until different parts of the show. He's being built as like a super cranky heel announcer, while Vince McMahon is being built as the ultimate babyface of the situation. But Ross is kind of complaining about the fact that he feels like Vince isn't really respecting him, treating him really crappy. And this is when the kind of the Vince being alluded to as the owner of WWE is starting to get mentioned quite a bit. And he actually will acknowledge it on the air, not here, but in a week or so before this. And I'll mention in a minute a little more about that as we continue on the show here. But I mean, also, I mean, not for nothing, but if you're debuting for WWE, and I'm not taking anything away from Furnas and LaFon, they were seemingly super solid in the ring. That being said, Owen and Brett are, I mean, Owen and Bulldog, they're basically the top guys that you'd want to basically, you can't ask for a better match there. Shout out to Michael, by the way, who not only joined us in the chat, but also threw a sub our way. Awesome there, guys. Thank you so much for doing that. And thank you so much to the guys that are following us over on Twitter. I think over the weekend, over on Friday, we ended up passing over 1,600 subscribers on Twitter, which is mind-blowing to me. Again, I mean, the reason I started this Watchalong Wrestling podcast is at the time, my wife worked nights. And so I found myself just watching the network quite a bit and checking out different things that were going on the network. And so I'd watch all these older shows, especially older shows I'd go to, and it kind of like relived the shows and some of the memories of shows that I had been at. And it just kind of was like, hey, I love talking about wrestling. I'm a huge wrestling fan. Let's start a side Twitter, because I am on Twitter at Tommy on the Spot if you want to follow me in my real life. My real life mostly consists of me complaining about the New York Jets. So if you'd like to hear me do that, you can certainly follow me over there. And at the time, I was starting a Disney podcast, which I do still do every week. myself and my buddy Steve, my best friend, one of my best friends down in Orlando, Florida. We were going to start a Disney podcast, so I kind of wanted to get this stuff going and some of the equipment going. So I figured, shit, I'm watching WWE a good amount throughout the nights while my wife is working. I'm literally reliving all the hype of the show so that I feel like I'm in on that hype. And I'm kind of reliving kind of being there at the actual show if I was there live and remembering kind of what the deal was with it. At the same time, I'm, you know, why not do it and be able to chat with everybody and see if the equipment works before I do my Disney show. And I just fell in love with it. I love chatting with you guys on here. You know, if you guys follow along with the YouTube channel, I'll try to do a variety of stuff throughout the week to keep you guys engaged and talk with you guys. If I get some wrestling memorabilia or a brand new figure or something, trying to do some unboxing as Bulldog gets pinned. And this is a huge deal. Remember that Bulldog and Owen, as I said, Bulldog and Owen were feuding with Sid and Shawn Michaels, both members of the, you know, title match at the end of the night. And now here they are getting pinned by Furnas and LaFon. You see Clarence Mason down at the down with them. He's their manager and was being presented as a lawyer. Not only is he a lawyer, but he's a lawyer in real life. He's a shoot lawyer. His legit gig is a lawyer. And was just a huge wrestling fan and somehow got involved and became a lawyer and part of the storyline as well. But Owen's looking good there and doing his thing.
Owen trying to knot up the hamstring there. That was a Charlie horse that Mark's thigh muscle. Another leg sweep. Come on. In control. Owen Hart. Owen Hart was doing it for his entire team. We're down to 2-on-1 now.
Back then, I thought that Furnas and LaFon looked super cool. Now I'm looking at him, and Furnas has some funky hair, man. His hair is pretty much like mine if it gets super long like that. I don't know what I was doing thinking they were really cool, but I thought they were just going to like pump new life into the tag division, which WWE was really struggling at the time. We'll check in here with what Dave Meltzer had to say about the match. LaFon, the former Dan Crofat, going by his real name, was billed as being from Paris, France. The match was designed to get he and Furnas, who were billed as former Asian tag team champions, over as the new top contenders for the tag titles. Obviously, Owen and Bulldog here are tag team champs. There were some nice wrestling early, particularly when Cassidy was in the ring. Jannetty was limping badly, having suffered some kind of foot injury. I think he's just, maybe he did have an injury, but I just think he was losing a step here at this point, which may have been a broken foot, but wasn't confirmed as a press time. Henry Godwin, blah, blah, blah. And he gave the match 3.25 stars. So, I mean, you know, back then until very recently, the thought about this was always that it was a scale of 5 stars, and so 3 stars I feel like for a kind of for a Survivor Series match, is a traditional Survivor Series match, is a pretty good deal. I also love that. So Furnas is from Oklahoma. Wow, what a drop kick by Furnas, man. Dude, these guys are damn good in the ring. I love that he's from Oklahoma, so JR just absolutely loves the guy. You'll also notice JR keeps throwing digs at Vince McMahon's inability to know what any sort of move is. Owen's doing all he can to establish these new contenders. What a snap German, and Furnas and LaFon, big win, and the Garden is into them. Now, they were pretty quiet during most of this match because, again, that tag division was the absolute shits. Other than Owen and Bulldog, who normally would be feuding with guys like Austin, you know, Foley at some point, here's Shawn and Sid and whomever else. Back in the day, these guys, the tag division was awful. I mean, you had the Body Donnas who were on and off, the Smoking Guns who had just broken up, the Godwins who were pretty much, you know, I like the Godwins, and I hope that Mattel makes an elite figure with Slop, a Slop accessory. But for the most part, they sucked. And the new Rockers, who like weren't even really a deal. I don't even know how they made the match. I guess they just needed 2 extra bodies, so they're in here. But I think that look at old New York City. I had mentioned before something. By the way, you'll see a lot of jump cuts in these WWE old pay-per-views. It's because there's definitely a lot of stuff on the network that's cut out. But we'll let you guys listen to Mankind.
And Mr. Bear, in just moments, you will be raised high above the ring. In a small cage, you'll be unable to interfere. And if The Undertaker can incapacitate Mankind enough, you'll be lowered right back down into The Undertaker's waiting arms.
So I'm not going in no cage. I'm not an animal. I'm not going in the cage. You're not over, and you're not. Oh, think back to Buried Alive. Think back to with his last dying gasp, how The Undertaker came to life. It doesn't bother me, because I know whatever form you take, Undertaker, you'll be crawling with your gasping breaths down the aisle of Madison Square Garden, and I will stop you like the cockroaches I used to call dinner. And just like those lovely insects in Survivor Series, Undertaker, I'm gonna eat you alive. I'm gonna very much, gentlemen.
All right.
Wow.
So, Paul Bear, the idea here is that Mankind and Undertaker just had a Buried Alive match in your house. That's right, Buried Alive. And Mankind won the match due to outside interference from the debuting Executioner. And in doing so, they ended up, helping Mankind to win the match. And it looked like Undertaker was buried and done for until the very end of the show. He came up the big hand right through the being buried and right through the dirt and the mush and the sand and whatever he was buried by. And now it kind of now he so he was going to be off TV for a little while and hadn't been seen since then. And so he had, but he'd been torturing Mankind and showing up, and you'd hear his voice from time to time. Paul Bear is now, the idea is they're going to have this rematch, but now Paul Bear is being put in a cage and suspended. Now, of course, at the same time, the Executioner is still showing up from time to time, so I never understood what the idea behind putting Paul Bear in the cage was supposed to do if they still had the Executioner potentially running around. So Undertaker is going to be, the idea here is Undertaker is going to be returning and repackaged. One of the things, if you're a Mattel collector, the defining moments Undertaker, the original one, not the Ministry one, the one with the wings, is based off this match right here. So you're about to see kind of flying Undertaker with the big wings and everything else. You saw those shots, though, of New York City, and even though I didn't attend this show live, this was probably the first time when I realized I could if I wanted to. That might sound really silly, but if you remember, I had not started really attending live pay-per-views until 2002. So this is still way, way before that, before my time in attending shows. And in doing so, it was one of these deals that I hadn't seen these shows before. I hadn't at all. So it was very, it was something that was different, and it was something that was, I remember seeing like that poster pretty much everywhere in New York City. Not to mention, I also remember there were a lot of different events going on. Obviously, we talked about how Brett and Sean were on the radio program. You had Shawn Michaels on the Regis show. Then you also had Bret Hart, who was at some event in Brooklyn, New York. They were promoting it all throughout Raw. And here comes Taker. And look how incredible. I know it's tacky, but look how freaking awesome Undertaker looks here, guys. I mean, he's coming down here. He's got these awesome wings. This is classic Undertaker. It's, I appreciate the fact that the guy is still doing his thing, and he's become the Babe Ruth, and he has just basically kind of, he wrestles once or twice now, wrestles once in a while, whatever. And I get all that. And maybe he's overstayed his welcome a little bit throughout his time. I personally always feel like there's a spot for The Undertaker. There's always a spot for the Legends. maybe he's overstated his welcome just a little bit. But when you think back of like your iconic Undertaker moments coming out of the freaking sky with the big wings and with the now completely repackaged, he's got the tear on the cheek. One of the most iconic Undertaker moments, and probably my personal favorite reincarnation of the Undertaker. A year earlier, I was 9 years old and petrified when the Undertaker returns. The Undertaker seemed to be dead quite a bit. He'd be killed off and then constantly brought back. When he was brought back as Phantom of the Opera Undertaker in Survivor Series 1995, I was completely and utterly petrified of him. I was so scared of the Undertaker. To the point that I made my parents turn off the TV and ran upstairs and made them watch the show on really low volume and then call me back when Undertaker ended up coming back. So Paul Bear's in the cage. This is probably one of the better shark cage deals WWE did. And they've done a few of these days with Enzo Amore, Chris Jericho. But the idea that like Paul Bear kept getting involved, so that's why they had to put him up there, is pretty cool. But again, the whole point here was that the Executioner was the guy that was kind of waiting in the wings, coming at the Undertaker. So was Paul Bear a bigger threat than the Executioner? You'll see the Executioner at the end of this match, by the way. He's the former Terry Bam Bam Gordy. He's not in the best of shape here. He doesn't last very long in WWE. I mean, he might have like one more match with Taker, and then he's done. And his run is very short-lived, which is unfortunate because Terry Gordy is one of the all-time greats. You know, he's freaking Freebird. But in this reincarnation of himself, not great. But I will say, if you are a figure collector like myself, we talk about the Fig Life from time to time over on the Twitter. The 3-pack, there is a 3-pack, I believe, that exists. It's a Bone Crunching 3-pack that exists between Paul Bear, Mankind, and the Executioner. Might be just one or two of those guys that's in there. But I know at least Executioner is there, and his figure is very rare. It's one of the rarer Jack's figures because it wasn't out there for too long. Because Executioner didn't last very long. So he's out there. But the Defining Moments Taker that we spoke about earlier is based off this outfit here. He has the entire wings, comes with it. One of the cooler figures. I think is one of my favorite Elite, from the Elite line of Mattel figures. Thank you guys so much for checking us out here. We do have the live chat open. And so if you guys do want to interact and let us know what's on your mind about this show, if you have any memories of Survivor Series 1996, of WWE in 1996, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Later on, we'll get into the Pillman Gun angle. With everything that happened with that, the fallout from that. We'll talk about the Bret Hart situation, his big contract dispute. At this point, remember, Bret Hart is not seen on WWE. He's been seen here and there on WWE TV, but he had not wrestled since WrestleMania 12. So there was a lot there with Bret Hart in terms of him now returning to the ring and returning to WWE in general. We'll talk a lot more about that once we get to the Bret Hart Stone Cold match, which, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think is next. I think next is The Rock's debut, but it's coming up just in 2 matches. This, I feel like, is a forgotten match between Taker and Mankind. They've had some good ones through the years. One of the first ones really that kind of caught everyone's attention, I think, is the Boiler Room Brawl at SummerSlam 96, the match where Paul Bear turns on Mankind. And then, obviously, when they restarted their feud in 98 and had the big King of the Ring 96 match, they ended up doing a deal where, you know, that's obviously a great match. This is kind of almost a forgotten match. But what was great about WWE at this time is that you had 3 feuds that can close the show at any pay-per-view. Remember, In Your House this time is still only 2 hours long. So Taker and Mankind, their feud closes the show. On this particular show, the Champ closed the show. Shawn Michaels is there. His feud with Sid closed the show. You can make a hard argument that you could easily have done a deal where you pretty much could have closed the show with Hart and Austin. Hart and Austin were pretty much the major crux of the talent and everything that was the entire show. All the buildup is all about Bret Hart's return to come and face Stone Cold Steve Austin. But Taker and Mankind were right there. That's it. Look at Mankind, man. Freaking senton to the outside. this is like Mankind in his peak WWE year, 96, where he has the match with Shawn in September at Mind Games. Here he is with Undertaker. He's flying all over the place. The guy was like reckless abandon, just did not care. And unfortunately, now at this point in his life, I mean, now he looks absolutely great, and he's had a couple different surgeries, but he had to have those surgeries due to the wear and tear of years of doing crazy moves like you just saw him do. And for a guy is, you know, is known as being relatively big. Look at him here. He looks great. Taker also very, very slender here. And Undertaker was always someone I feel like the Undertaker feud had its own purpose on the show, but I feel like Undertaker was never really too into the title picture itself. Like, if you look back through the years, yes, Taker had the title in 91, but then through the years, it was always like, you had your title match, you had your Taker match. And that's really kind of where he's at now, until eventually ending up back in the title picture come WrestleMania, which is just because of a whole bunch of insanity and different reasons like that. But basically, this show here, not only do they have the Survivor Series, but they actually had the Hall of Fame the night before this. It was held at the Marriott Marquis, which is right outside of New York City to this day. And most of the time when WWE does anything in the New York City area, that's where they end up staying, is that Marriott Marquis, where they have the kind of the rotating restaurant up there. If you've been to New York City, you definitely know what I'm talking about. It's a rotating restaurant, so you can sit in there and it rotates around. And I'll give you guys the list here of who is on that show. Now, I did try to go back and watch that Hall of Fame, really mostly because of the interest in the Hall of Fame ceremony itself. And I saw that it was on the network, and I was really excited about that. But it's not in its full form. I guess they didn't have it fully in its form, in the full form. So they have it like kind of chopped up, and with Renee Young and with Gorilla Monsoon kind of filling in the different pieces and everything to that extent. So 1996, let's just go through the class of this year. We'll talk about it as we go along. This was the final year they did the Hall of Fame until they brought it back for WrestleMania 20 in 2004. And the people that were inducted on this show, Baron Mikhail Cicluna, Gorilla Monsoon inducted him. You had Captain Lou Albano, inducted by Joe Franklin. You can see his speech on the network. You had Superfly Jimmy Snuka on there with Don Morocco. You had the unpredictable Johnny Rodz, inducted by Arnold Scotland. Love Johnny Rodz. Did an entire college project on Johnny Rodz and on the school that Johnny Rodz has in Gleason's Gym in Brooklyn. He's trained some of the bigger names, like the Dudleys, at least Devon Dudley, and Big Cass, a host of others. You also had Killer Kowalski, was inducted by Triple H. And you had Pat Patterson inducted by Bret Hart. Then posthumously, you had Vincent J. McMahon inducted by Shane McMahon. And finally, the Valiant brothers, Jimmy Valiant and Johnny Valiant, inducted by the British Bulldog and Owen Hart. So, a pretty big class. But it was the last class that WWE did prior to 2004. The bottom line there is, oh, okay. Oh, very cool. So Michael is actually I did not even realize this till he let me know over on Twitter at Watch WrestlePod. He actually hosts the Bottom Line Wrestling Podcast. Check them out over there. Awesome. Very, very cool. Thank you so much again for checking out what we're doing here on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. Just wanted to make sure we were still on the air. Sometimes when I was kind of chiming over and trying to jump into who got inducted in the 96 Hall of Fame, didn't want to lose out on the feed. So, but glad we're back on there. Taker here is about to start his until one of his top. I mean, the guy's had such a long career, but by circumstance, he ends up in the main event at WrestleMania 13 and wins the title. However, at the time, he wasn't. It wasn't working out. You know, at the time, he kind of just had his own things going on. But it's funny. Vince McMahon talk about how he has him by the goozle. I don't know what the goozle is. Also, mandible claw. Like, if you think about it, like the idea that he's sticking his fingers down someone's throat, but like that's causing like some sort of deal with the nerves is interesting. And one of my favorite finishers. I also appreciate how Mankind squeals the entire time that he has the mandible claw in, and that he. I always thought growing up that the guy who had his fingers in his mouth was the guy squealing, but it's good stuff nonetheless. I also appreciate that the crowd is chanting "Rest in Peace," which I guess is supposed to encourage the Undertaker to get back up, but it's kind of like they're encouraging him to just call it a night. One of the reasons I really liked this use of the shark cage is Paul's up there, and he also looks scared shitless, and like he doesn't want to try to move around too much for fear that that thing is going to fall down and he'll plummet to his demise. So he's just up there, and at the end of the day, that's what it's meant to do, is to keep someone out of the ring. So it's good to see that it was actually being used for what it was supposed to do. I do also appreciate that they said that Undertaker had a smile on his face. I did not see any sort of smile on his face. Why would he be smiling while he had Mankind's fingers in his throat, in his mouth? Check out Mike Chioda there. The dude was just refereeing the match between Charlotte and Bayley at last week's Evolution, still doing his thing 20 plus years later. Refereeing the match, by the way.
It must be, but nonetheless, it definitely had an effect on the Undertaker. Maybe not the effect Mankind was hoping for. Look at this.
Oh man, Taker is look at Taker flying over the ropes. I think he's done that for quite some time. I don't necessarily want to see him after we, you know, I saw the clip of Shawn doing the moonsault at Crown Jewel and basically just falling. Oh my God! Mankind flips over to try to hit Taker. Taker moves, and he just completely flips onto the floor. Jesus Christmas. Hard to watch Mick Foley a bit here in some of these things. The guy's just throwing himself everywhere. This is an underrated match, so these guys are really busting it. You never hear anyone talk about this match. But I do appreciate that. I guess Mankind realized because he had the mask, it was hard to kind of see him selling. So he felt like he had to make so much noise that that he kind of just screamed and squealed and did everything else that he was supposed to do during the match itself. I love that Paul Bear's up there, and he looks super, totally scared shitless. I love that, like, so Vince McMahon is the guy who's, you know, clearly booking these shows, right? He's the owner of WWE. There's absolutely no freaking clue what that is. I don't know what it is either, but you'd think he would have that. He would know. I'd at least be able to tell you what it was. And by the way, kind of just harkening back to the Hall of Fame, one of the things I did see was Pat Patterson's speech. And even though Brett inducts him, he gives like a super shout out to the his number one fan. And he gives a super shout out. He goes through like all these guys from his era, but then he circles back to like the people who are in charge of the new generation and the wrestlers that are kind of leading the way for WWE into the future. And he says, especially my number one guy, and like Brett is standing right there. Brett just inducted Pat into the Hall of Fame. Clearly loves him, has had nothing but great things to say about him. And he goes, where is he? Shawn Michaels. And then Shawn stands up like way back in the cheap seats and kind of gives a wave to the crowd. Tombstone from Taker. I think that's all she wrote. Thought Executioner did a run in here. I haven't seen this show in quite some time, so I could have been off. I'm off. Taker wins. Cool. Look at Paul. Paul is not. Most of the time when they're in the shark cage, you see the guy yelling and shouting and hooting and hollering. He's just standing there, holding on for dear life, praying it doesn't fall. And Undertaker, man, it's got to probably be like 30 there. He looks just like a kid. He looks so damn young. Okay, so now Executioner is going to do his little run in here. I mean, the gimmick itself was yeah, here he is. Okay. It barely, if you call it a run in. I mean, looks just ridiculous. Unfortunately, just did not work out, which is a shame. I believe this is even after his ECW run, which if you don't remember his ECW run, you'll probably remember that during ECW television, they'd always have the commercial promoting the ECW home video release when Paul Heyman would say, and make sure you get the ECW home video release that features the match between Bam Bam Bigelow and Terry Bam Bam Gordy. That's always what I associate Terry Gordy with, other than obviously the Freebirds. But it sucks that it didn't work out for Terry Gordy at this point, because I thought that if he had gone, you know, if Terry Gordy had been having a bit of a feud with the Undertaker when he was wrestling, I think he would have been just freaking great. Unfortunately, though, he did pass away in 2001. So, I mean, unfortunately, he only, you know, it didn't really work out. So, and actually, on the Wikipedia page, I do remember this, and if you have an opportunity, certainly check out Bruce Pritchard's podcast. Everybody has checked out Bruce Pritchard's podcast. They do not need any hype from me, but something to wrestle with. And they mentioned on the show that the reason for the Executioner, let me pull that back up, the reason for the Executioner gimmick was because Vince McMahon was not high on Terry Gordy at the time, and they were doubts that he could still compete. The Executioner's use of the mask was intended to protect Gordy so that if he could not prove himself, that audiences would not know it was Gordy, and thus his legacy would not be tainted. Had Gordy been able to compete at a high level, then there would have been the opportunity later for Gordy to unmask. It was mentioned that his hiring was mostly done as a favor for Michael Hayes, who's obviously now with WWE as Doc Hendricks.
On America Online, and certainly
oh, there you go. There we go. So it says, in an untold story, Mankind and Undertaker were traveling to Japan in the month of September to locate the Executioner in the rainforest as their hitman to take out the Undertaker. So that's kind of what the idea behind the Executioner gimmick was. Didn't work out. And here comes Sonny. Sonny is in peak, highest level Sonny here. I mean, she is about as popular as she's ever been. She was like one of the most downloadable, if not the most downloadable woman on all of AOL, which you guys know AOL now. You probably know it as like, some folks still have that AOL email address from time to time. Vince McMahon dancing. Ah, what a gift for the ages that'll be. I want to take that GIF, and whenever anyone sends me any good news, I want to take that little bit of Vince dancing and utilize that as a GIF. But so Sunny was like a super popular. She was like the most downloadable woman on AOL at the time. America Online, and you just saw America Online. America Online, even though now it's still around for some people's emails because they just haven't changed them in about 20 years, AOL used to be like the internet. That basically used to be it. One of the biggest internet providers around, and you can go and get, and I'll pause here, let you guys hear Doc's interview with Team Triple H.
And I guess considering the disadvantage your opponents will be at being 3-on-4 because of the injury to Mark Henry, you think victory's in the bag?
That's right. And this is the big time. This is New York City.
The Triple H.
Survivor Series. Mark Merrill, I'm going to show you why I'm the Intercontinental Champion. And it looks like your team has already come up a little bit short.
You know what? Big Mark Henry has feigned injury rather than face the gold medal massacre that this team was going to put on him. You know what? Oh, yeah, right. I'll tell you this right now. There aren't any 3 men in the world that can beat the 4 of us. We're surviving, baby.
We may be a unique combination, but together we make a well-oiled machine of destruction. Survivor Series, what an appropriate title.
Goldust?
You'll never forget the name of Goldust.
Well, get ready at ringside.
All right, so lots to get into here with this entire thing, because at the time, what was going on, and we'll try to get into as much of it as we can. One last point on Sonny here. I remember Sonny doing a signing across the street from my house at a store known as the Wrestling Universe, which still exists to this day. It's at a different location now. They're your one-stop source for all things WWE figures, and they have some really unique signings. They do like ECW Day, WCW Day. They had the Bullet Club there one day. Check them out, Wrestling Universe. Great, great store. Love Jack. Grew up there pretty much. And I was across the street, and I remember we were going to be able to join the line to meet Sonny. And at the time, we went to go meet her. It was like one of these deals where we basically just watched the line from our house. And this line was all the way around the block to meet Sonny. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And we waited till it dwindled down and then went over to meet Sonny. And unannounced, next to her was Skip. And I felt terrible because Skip, obviously, the late, great Chris Candido. But at the time in WWE, he was just known as Skip. And it was really awkward as to why he was there, because at the time he and, the Body Donnas had kind of already broken away from Sonny, so it was a little awkward. And most people asked poor Skip to sit out of the photo that they could take with Sonny and just took one with just her. But I didn't, because I felt awkward, even though I didn't want Skip in my photo. And even though my father had stepped in and said, hey, do you mind if we get one with just Sonny? I was like, oh, no, it's okay, Dad. I would love if Skip joined the photo. So he did, even though, one of these things. But it's a shame what happened with Sonny. I mean, she was so freaking big. And at the time, then I remember 4 or 5 years, 8 years later, 2004, seeing Skip and a couple people out in the parking lot and asking if I can get a photo, and Skip saying, would you like Cammy in the photo, Sonny? And I was like, sure. And it was just weird that here I was all these years later. Now Chris Candido was the bigger thing and the cooler person to see and meet. And Sonny was like kind of a background player when at one point she was like the friggin' hottest thing in wrestling and one of the bigger, she had some crossover appeal too. Everyone wanted some of Sonny. One of my first crushes growing up. My first was Pamela Anderson, Royal Rumble 95. Let's go. But Sonny was right there as well. JR is in rare form. As I said, he was kind of going through his random little heel turn here. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing going on Mr. Perfect until this match begins, just because everyone's coming out here. I'll let everyone get their introductions and talk to you guys about Rocky Maivia, because he's going to be a part of this match. You did hear them mention, though, that the aforementioned Mark Henry was hurt. And that is true. Mark Henry was hurt. But at the time, Raw was taping episodes at a time in chunks. So even though Mark Henry was hurt, he was actually hurt like right before the show, or like a week or two before the show. But they couldn't do anything because they had already recorded things ahead of time and had filmed footage with Mark Henry in the lead up to the Survivor Series. So they didn't want to just straight up get rid of it. So instead, they ended up kind of just chilling and holding off on revealing who would replace him. until this show. And they didn't even announce really that anything was going to happen until, I believe, the free-for-all. Maybe one of the weekend shows. The Stalker. If you're wondering who the Stalker is, that is Barry Windham. And one of the greatest wrestlers of all time in one of the absolute worst gimmicks. He looks like he's in his mid-50s, and I think he's only in like his mid-30s. But he just looks so terrible here. And I remember the Stalker, when the gimmick started, the Stalker was basically, he had a green face paint on. He was like trying to like hide in like as camouflage or something. At least he was trying. Here he's like wearing a cut-off WWF shirt. He doesn't have any face paint on. And he has an awful, he couldn't look worse. What a horrible look. Speaking of horrible looks, there's The Rock. Rocky Maivia, debut match. With a haircut that only Rocky Johnson and Addie Johnson, his parents, could possibly like. But this is The Rock's match here. This is everything about The Rock. You're going to see Mark Henry's replacement. Instituting the Mick Foley cheap pop there.
Who's going to take Mark Henry's place? Stupid enough to come out here with 3 guys, Ninja. Well, let me tell you, this wild man has got a revelation.
You guys listen to Mark Mero reveal.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get wild for Jake the Snake Roberts.
So it's Jake Roberts in his the tail end here of his return to WWE in 1996. I guess they didn't want to do anyone like huge here or any surprises because of the fact that they had built up the mystery tag partner, for the match coming up later. So I guess they didn't want to go crazy here. And so they brought out Jake Roberts. At this point, Jake Roberts looks like he's about 50 years old in this match. God, this entire team, other than The Rock and Mark Mero, just look ridiculous. They all look old. It's looking Jake Roberts, Barry Windham look about 100 years old each in this match. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect was being built up as kind of the guy who helped Mark Mero capture the Intercontinental title. Loving these old shots of New York City, by the way. Man. Love it. So cool. So basically, they did a deal where Mr. Perfect was helping Mark Mero capture the Intercontinental Championship. He was on his side, and they built up that Mr. Perfect was supposed to return on one of the episodes of Raw leading up to the Survivor Series. I want to say it was either 3 episodes out. I think 3 episodes out. They were building this up. This is the return of Bret Hart to WWE for his decision on his future, and the return of the ring into Mr. Perfect's in-ring return. What ends up happening is that Triple H attacks him in the back. He shows up in the ring, and he can't wrestle. Gorilla Monsoon won't let him wrestle. So he calls on Mark Mero to take his place. When he does, Mark Mero, Triple H refuses to fight Mark Mero unless he puts the Intercontinental title on the line. Perfect encourages him, hey, come on, Mark, you can put your belt on the line. You can do this, blah, blah, blah. I want you to get revenge for Hunter for me. Mark does the solid for Mr. Perfect. Puts the belt on the line. Triple H ends up winning the Intercontinental title because Perfect turns on Mark Mero. Which leads us to, remember, all the episodes of Raw are in the bag. So you hear all these different things going on with Mr. Perfect. You hear all these different things going on with Mr. Perfect and his, that he's basically going to be the guy who would basically, he was like the color commentator for Superstars. He was supposed to be on an episode of Livewire that he blew off. And all of a sudden, they have all these things recorded with Perfect in the corner of Triple H, but behind the scenes, he's negotiating with WCW. So this, from the November 25th, 1996 edition of the Wrestling Observer. Another change of plans regards the situation with Kurt Hennig. Hennig met and agreed to terms with Eric Bischoff late in the previous week, and then no-showed his scheduled WWF television appearances on both Livewire and Superstars, along with his booking for house shows in Buffalo and Cleveland as Hunter S. Helmsley's second. With the no-shows, WWF probably figured Hennig was WCW bound and had Jerry McDevitt send out a basic legal threats regarding tampering since Hennig was still under contract. The WWF was under the impression that Hennig was going to debut on the 11/11 Nitro in a Lex Luger-type deal, although those in WCW insist that was never the plan because they were aware that Hennig, still having a WWF contract, and that his debut wouldn't be until February after his contract expired. As the week went on, Hennig and McMahon had at least one phone conversation, which everything apparently was settled, or at least that's what those in WWF were under the impression of. By late in the week, the belief was that not only would Hennig return for the Superstars and the pay-per-view, but that he would sign a new big money contract with WWF as a wrestler. However, when Hennig no-showed a personal appearance on 11/16 and the pay-per-view on 11/17, so he misses this pay-per-view, Survivor Series, no-shows that, WWF realized Hennig is all but gone. There must have been a major underlying heat between Hennig and McMahon for Hennig to not only jump, but also burn McMahon and the WWF on 2 consecutive weekends on the way out the door. The story going around is that Hennig had no interest in returning to the ring, as he was a very short time away from a lifetime disability settlement and his Lloyds of London policy, which would have paid him a reported $300,000 lump sum. However, something happened which Hennig blamed McMahon for, which led to Lloyd's not going to pay the lump sum, which, without the lump sum, probably lessened Hennig's reasons for not wanting to return to the ring. Lloyd's, which no longer sells disability insurance to pro wrestlers after having to pay out to such a high percentage of those that purchased policies during the short period they were offered, such as Rick Rude, Ted DiBiase, Road Warrior Animal, Hennig, and Nikita Koloff, along with others that all collected on the policies. In the case of all but Animal and Hennig, they collected the big lump sum for permanent disability and have never returned to the ring again. If you remember Ted DiBiase, 93 SummerSlam, that's the last we see of him. And if you remember, Rick Rude returns with DX, but he never does anything remotely physical. When he decided that he was going to return due to the bitterness with McMahon, he decided to contact Bischoff and WCW. If it actually happened this way, then Bischoff and WCW would be less in jeopardy of tampering charge if Hennig came to them rather than the other way around. So this is where it's tough because WWE at the time is recording their episodes of Raw. And at the time, WWE is in the process of transitioning from a 9 o'clock start time to an 8 o'clock start time. Reason being that at 9 o'clock, basically Nitro already had 2 hours. So they had an entire hour to build up their program and to pump it up before they were able to basically do a deal where they basically did a deal where they were doing their thing, and they basically were in the process of having these shows in the can, but with the transition now, at least they'd start at the same time. And what WWF was trying to do was record the biggest pieces of the show live. They did it at, basically they did it when they were, let's see here. So you'd see a lot of, if you go back and you watch old Raws, the matches would kind of not really be that big of a deal. They'd be very downplayed. There wouldn't be too much going on. And instead, you'd see a lot of things like the live cutaway, where Austin goes to visit Brian Pillman's house. The deal where Austin goes and Austin is in Stanford, and they have a thing going on with Bret Hart in his house. They were trying to set things up remotely so they'd have something live that they'd be able to talk about and interspersed with the matches. And those big live features, even though they would take place away from the ring, were usually the big portion of the show that was built up. Because no one knew what was going to happen during those segments ahead of time because they were all live. Also, they'd also dub in the commentary live. So, or at least after the fact. They do it live, I think, in Stamford, which is why on those episodes of Raw 96, if you go and you watch them, Vince McMahon, Jerry Lawler, Jim Ross, they're never really seen at ringside because they're not. They record these in post. And if you actually go back and watch, there's actually a lot of times where Lawler has a segment on the show, but he still does commentary to start the show off. So he jumps on there with commentary, and he does commentary for like the first 3 matches. And then at the end of the show, he'll say something like, you know, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go check out. I'm going to go get a closer look. I'll be right back, McMahon. And you hear him put down the headset and show up ringside. But really, they have to do that because he can't do commentary on his own match. But literally, he could have because it was all done in post. So the hope there was, at least with the live commentary and the live shows, they'd have with the live like features that they'd throw in interspersed with the recorded matches, at least they'd have some reason for people to want to tune in live to these shows. Problem, of course, would be that at some point, things like Mark Henry gets injured right before the show and the show's already in the can. Or not only Mark Henry getting injured, but the whole thing with Mr. Perfect. He's not even showing up to shows, but he's still on Raw because of the fact that like he's already pre-recorded to be on Raw. And he ends up burning WWE real bad. The thing with Sunny is that she basically spent all of 96 bouncing around from tag team to tag team. She had managed the Body Donnas. She had managed the Smoking Guns. She had managed the Godwins. So she was basically the manager of anybody who had the tag team championships because she was like, I guess, a gold digger, and wanted those belts. So she would do her own thing. But at the end of the day, what ended up happening was she ended up not really having much purpose if she wasn't managing people. So if you listen to this, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard about her, that is a trip. You see here, she's just doing commentary. They just needed a reason for her to be on the show, basically, at some point.
Taking advantage of the veteran from Stone Mountain, Georgia. 41-year-old Jake the Snake Roberts has been assaulted here.
41. The guy looks 60. And I mean, he looks literally 60, Jake Roberts here.
Wide open. He's off the red. He likes this. Jake hurt. Lawler the advantage. Just the way Lawler wants it. And Lawler's got a spoon to settle with Jake the Snake. He does indeed.
Look at Lawler's too much. He's in the ring there, acting like Jake is drunk. Now, of course, one of the things here, so Jake at the time was doing his like recovering type deal, right? That's where the whole Austin 316 thing came from, if you remember. They did the deal where it was basically Austin 316 came from the fact that Jake Roberts was kind of pushing that he had found God and that he was doing whatever, right? So that's what they ended up doing. And they acted like he was no longer drinking. He had found God. He had felt better about himself, what have you. What ends up happening is that Jake ends up getting a bit, he's not actually sober, right? Definitely not at some points here. And so he starts missing shows and doesn't go well. They actually, because I do try to bring the Mattel figure line out there, they actually just released this Jake in the figure line, the older, kind of grizzled veteran Jake Roberts, and are doing so with him kind of doing his thing. Look at Goldust in there. This is 96. He's still having matches in 2018. And you can make a strong case that he's having his best matches here. He had not turned face at all yet. He had been a heel threat his entire run. Basically about a little over, at this point, a little over a year in the company. But crazy stuff. JR is pumping the rest of it. It's so funny because JR, in a way, is kind of in a tough spot. He's kind of like where Michael Cole was when he had the brief period of time where he was a heel, in that he would constantly be a heel, and you hear him kind of taking jabs at Vince McMahon throughout the show. But at the same time, he's still the guy that's the hype man. He's hyping everything up. By the way, if you take a look there, the 2-referee deal where you have a referee in the ring and you have a referee on the outside to make sure when someone's eliminated, they go back to the back. If you notice, the referee on the outside is Harvey Wimpleman, former manager of Giant Gonzalez and Kamala, a variety of other people. There he is as an official on the outside. And it's not even really mentioned, so it looked like he maybe was just transitioning into that role. Not sure it's... So, crazy stuff. Very cool. Ahmed Johnson, by the way, funny story I'll quickly share. As they mentioned him, Ahmed Johnson, curtain call, goodbye Barry Windham. That's about. So they mentioned Ahmed Johnson. Ahmed Johnson was out at the time, right while he was in the midst of basically being WWE's number 2. Might sound crazy, but he was like the second to Shawn Michaels. He was the tugboat to Shawn Michaels as Hulk Hogan, if you will. And in doing so, he was well on his way to being like top guy. I've always thought Ahmed was going to win the belt. And I definitely think at some point there was definitely discussions about it. And it never happened. And one of the reasons it never happened is because Ahmed got badly hurt, unfortunately, when he was kind of primed and ready for his big-time deal. And ready for his big push. And it never occurred. Because he ended up getting hurt and never really recovered once he got hurt. But I'll tell you the funny story. I was in the process of going to meet Ahmed many years ago. Back in, I want to say 96. And because he got hurt, I was unable to go see him, which was a bummer. And so because I wasn't able to go see him, we were on the line to go see him, and then they ended up getting rid of Ahmed because he couldn't be a part of the meet and greet. So what ended up happening is at the very last second, they said, hey, everybody, Ahmed Johnson can't be here today. It was free meet and greet, so it wasn't like we had to pay anything. But they said, we have found a suitable replacement we think everyone will love. They hit the music. It's Psycho Sid's music. Psycho Sid comes out, and I fucking bolt. No interest in meeting Psycho Sid because Sid did such a good job with the character that even though he was a babyface, I was worried that maybe he was going to turn on us, right? You don't want him doing anything wrong. And of course, the funnier part was my sister, who at the time was, so 96, was 7 or 8, somewhere around there. 6, maybe? 6 or 7, somewhere around there. Had no issue. She was thrilled that Psycho Sid was there. So she went to meet him. I did not. Instead, I signed up for the sweepstakes that was going on at the time to win a free trip to Orlando, Florida, or free tickets to the WWE show that night, and won. I won the sweepstakes for the free trip to Orlando, Florida, all expenses paid, but I didn't do it because I cried because I would have preferred to go to the WWE show and convince the family, who probably could have went to the box office and bought tickets to the house show, to switch with me, the guy who did win. So I gave up the free tickets to Orlando, and instead my family went to the WWE house show that night, where I sat in a comfortable distance away from Psycho Sid.
Wildman had designs on you. Oh, my goodness.
Forget about it. I don't take used merchandise, babe.
I see.
So you see Crush in there now. He is doing his jailbird gimmick. The idea here was that he was in jail, and he basically had returned. Clarence Mason had bailed him out, and he had returned to WWE, and that's why he looked the way that he did, with the big, looking like he's got the big tattoo on his face, and everything to that extent. And so, by the way, so not only is he that, but he'd also be like really angry at fans who would have jailbird signs and everything to that extent. Of course, he was actually legitimately in jail. He'd be arrested briefly for purchasing steroids and possessing an illegal handgun, and so was legit in jail. That was a shoot. So this gimmick here, which I do hope gets his own elite figure someday, if I'm being honest. Talking about that fig life. Crush needs more elite figures. He only has Demolition Crush, which I'm at least grateful they did eventually create Demolition Crush after creating both Axe and Smash many moons ago as part of the Legends line. So they did at least give you Crush. And I think a lot of Crushes were purchased simply for the helmet and the gauntlets if folks had misplaced those from Axe and Smash. But cool, at least they gave us that Crush. But I want Kona Crush. I want Jailbird Crush. I want DOA Crush. All the Crushes. I want nonstop Crushes and everything else. Transitioning now into the Schafhofer Grapefruit, by the way. Our second and final beverage here. Certainly not looking to get tanked here as we watch Survivor Series 96. And I'm a lightweight, despite my large Irish frame. I am indeed a pretty big lightweight. You forget here that like the Intercontinental title picture was Triple H, who's very young here. You can tell he's very thin too. He's very like a real thin frame. Goldust, but Goldust was almost not in this title, the Intercontinental title picture, even though he was champ and he was wrestling with these guys. Goldust was like just a notch. He was in the he was feuding with Undertaker not long before this, so he was like a. Getting on his way between mid-card and top heel. Obviously, Mark Merrow. And I guess Ahmed, the aforementioned Ahmed Johnson. But Merrow really was right there. And while Mark Merrow, I mean, you're seeing some things here. He's pretty agile. I mean, he had some good offense, and he seems relatively agile here. Trying to, let me just check this down a little bit. There you go. I think anything changed. Oh, that's a great shot there of Vince McMahon kind of cheering on. And here you hear Vince doing the exaggerated commentary, and you actually get the faces with it. And look at Mark there, though, man. Kind of a hitting Hunter. God, Rocky Maivia. Look at him on the apron there. He is Mr. Goofball. I mean, he's just so exaggerated with everything he does. There's no telling why people just got rid of him after a while. Wow. So I'm not sure that was supposed to happen. Mark Merrow with a stiff drop kick to Crush, and Crush tumbling to the outside. Right through the ropes. Another stiff bump there from Merrow. I'm wondering, we've seen a lot of these big bumps onto the floor. I'm wondering if maybe that padding on the floor was a lot stiffer than it had been at later times. Kind of with the return here of the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast, I wanted to let you guys know the idea is to do these shows every week and to do, you know, kind of a show that I wanted to talk about. There's so much to talk about here with Survivor Series 96. There's still so much to get into. So I hope you guys are enjoying this show. I'm excited to talk with you guys. If you guys like what you see, of course, hit subscribe, smash the like button, do what you got to do. I love that stuff. I appreciate it, but, like, you know, I prefer to just interact with you guys and hear what you guys' thoughts on this show are. I love hearing that stuff. So whatevs. But if you can, certainly subscribe. It definitely helps, and I am appreciative of that. Merrow's gone. Roberts is gone, and now it's time for the Rocky Maivia show. And actually, if you go and look at The Rock's YouTube page, Rock does commentary on this match and really puts Crush over as just being a great guy and puts Dustin over and talks about being his, you know, idea here. And no, I don't know because it's not on the network, but I don't know if like the secondary programming for WWE worked as kind of like more of your hype pieces and that alternative type programming, your superstars, your blast off, your live wire. But Raw, even though Rocky made a couple of appearances, they never really did anything to promote him until the final night right before Survivor Series, the final Raw leading up to this. They finally talked about it. They showed him in the back, getting excited, doing his thing, and kind of running along the side there with Kevin Kelly. And he looked just about as happy as possible. And was talking about his family's heritage, his dad, Rocky Johnson, his grandfather, Peter Maivia, why he was going to be taking the name. They showed him getting ready and the importance of Madison Square Garden to his family. But that being said, the crowd is behind him here. They are really into him. Doesn't last long because people realize that he's, you know, we're way past the idea of the cheesy kissing babies baby face, and he's the hardcore version of that. I feel like probably your number one guy that's like that these days is Finn Balor, which is a real shame because Finn's an amazing heel. Finn has a lot to offer in terms of being a top babyface. Clearly was with NXT. I feel like he really got NXT. One of the major reasons NXT got on the map and is what it is today. Obviously, the Demon is super over. But he's that cheesy babyface now. He comes out every single time. He's smiling from ear to ear. Just happy to be there. He's thrilled. And I think he could do so much more with Finn Balor. Crowd is popping huge. They are really into Rocky Maivia. So he eliminates Crush. Pretty big deal, right? Crush was a veteran at the time. So now it's down to him and Goldust. And I remember as a kid just thinking this was like the coolest thing in the world, right? Because Rocky did. He seemed like a kid. He was a new guy. You kind of wanted to get behind him. And unfortunately, they gave him everything way too quick and killed the gimmick. But first night in, it was all good for Rocky Maivia. Despite the ridiculous outfit, despite the ridiculous haircut, despite the nonstop silliness, the smiley, he wins with a power slam on the knee. And that's the end. Rocky Maivia wins. So before we get to Austin and Brett, I just wanted to quickly, again, thank you guys for tuning in and talk to you guys about what's upcoming on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. The hope is to do these shows each and every week with you guys, to watch an old show, to be on with you guys, chatting, doing our thing, hopefully expanding this network, and definitely subscribe because throughout the week I am on here with you guys. I like to talk to you guys about what's going on in the current product, any breaking news, any shows. Didn't do Crown Jewel. I'm not. I was kind of just avoiding it, to be honest. There was too much going on, too many political opinions, too many different things. I thought it wasn't really necessary for me to be on that. That being said, if it's a big pay-per-view, I usually get on and chat with you guys about it. What I wanted to do, though, was make this show a little bit more interactive in regards to the pay-per-views that are chosen to be watched on the show. So with that being said, there are 3 different Survivor Series events I've attended. And over the next 2 weeks, I will go over those shows with you guys over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to review 2 of the 3. And you guys are going to help to decide which of those 3 shows I go and review here on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a poll on my Twitter. I'm still in this idea from the old Something to Wrestle With, but that's what it is. We all help each other out, right? So put up the poll. I'm going to put all 3 of those Survivor Series shows on the site. The Survivor Series 2002, the Survivor Series 2011, and the Survivor Series 2013. Both these shows are really, really, all 3 of these shows, I think I have great stories to tell, tons of really fun stuff. And I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and we're going to go over to the one that wins the poll we're going to do next week, and then the one that comes in second place we'll do the following week as our final show we do before the Survivor Series 2018. So that's something to look forward to, hopefully, and hopefully you guys will get into that. So now it's time. Let's talk about everything going on in this match upcoming. Stone Cold and Brett. Basically, at this point, Bret Hart is out of WWE. Hadn't been there for a long period of time. He did some overseas tours. He did the Wrestle Vessel cruise. In case you're wondering what the Wrestle Vessel cruise is, it's similar to the cruise that everyone's going with right now, right? Everyone has the, everyone just did the Jericho cruise. WWE did have a cruise back in the day. It was called the Wrestle Vessel. And there was some, uncertainty over whether or not Brett was going to return. At least they were kind of hyping up that there was some uncertainty amongst WWE itself. But behind the scenes, there was a lot of uncertainty. And look at Austin go. Let you listen to Austin for a sec. All right, well, so much fun. So, Brett's out of WWE from March of '96 until November of '96. And while that's happening, Austin just starts calling him out. And Brett's his guy. He wants to fight him. Yeah, I'll let you listen to his interview, guys.
Stipulations that have been added to the matchup in seconds. You are going to face the legendary Bret the Hitman Hart, the excellence of execution. The winner gets a title shot. It's seconds away now. You're set to face Bret Hart.
And you think that I'm supposed to be intimidated by the way you build him up and talk about stipulations, don't you? Just don't even say a word, son. Everybody talks about the best there is, the best there was, all the other crap. The excellence of execution. Cliches are cliches, and an ass whipping is an ass whipping, and that's exactly what you're going to get tonight at the hands of Stone Cold Steve Austin, and that's the bottom line.
Whew.
Thank you very much.
Man, he's in top form here. Austin in '96. Late '96 is like, it's just Austin's time. Like, he's just hitting everything out of the park. But he calls out Bret Hart and starts to do this while Bret is out. It's similar to when The Miz just randomly started calling out John Cena in '09. Of course, Miz was not over nearly as much as Austin was. But Austin's ready to go. Look at him. He's just like such a freaking badass here. And what's happening is the crowd's getting behind him. He's the badass. But despite having legitimately no redeeming qualities, people love him, right? The times are changing in the world. People are really starting to get behind him. They're acting like everything he does is dastardly and awful and building him up as being like the biggest scumbag, the biggest asshole there possibly is. And the people are loving him. Look at this crowd. They're popping huge for him, especially in New York City. Shit, they love Stone Cold Steve Austin. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was going on with Bret Hart. Bret Hart's contract was coming up. And there was no guarantee that he was going to come back to WWE because WCW really wanted Bret Hart. It felt like Bret was like, well, I'll let you listen to Bret. Sorry, I'll take a pause for the cause.
Most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. You yourself, Bret, have called Stone Cold Steve Austin the best wrestler in the World Wrestling Federation today, and you face him in seconds.
One thing that Stone Cold Steve Austin doesn't have going for him in this match is the fact that it is Madison Square Garden. And I meant it when I said it's not a church, but it's holy ground. Well, it is. I've got my fans out here, and I've got my fans all around the world. They've been waiting for this very moment. Now, where I stand, we're all going to find out right now. But Stone Cold, remember one thing. I'm not greedy for money. I'm greedy for respect.
Love that line.
When things all said and done, you will respect me.
The excellence of execution, Bret the Hitman Hart, ready to return.
Now, that line there, I'm not greedy for money, I'm greedy for respect, is something where it really feels like that's why he stayed with WWE, right? It wasn't really for the money. He clearly was going to make a lot of money. It was rumored that he was going to make $2.8 million over $2.8 million a year for 3 years. That might be 2.2. Seems like a lot of different numbers have been thrown out there. Over 3 years, each year. There's some rumors as to like what that was. There's a rumor that $800,000 a year for Bret to wrestle, and he would also get 2 movies with Turner a year. And each one of those movies that he'd get $1 million each to do those movies. So Bret was seen as a hot commodity. Remember, he did the Lonesome Dove show. And he really was somebody who WCW wanted big. So much so that they even got Hall and Nash to have a clause in their contract which stated that no one could come in and get paid more than that, other than, I guess, Hogan. right? Because that's Hogan probably did. But they were making something like $750,000 and were okay with Bret making more. So WCW like really treated Bret well. It looked like he was going to go to WCW. And then at the last minute, Vince McMahon devised the strategy, said that he couldn't pay Bret what WCW was paying him up front, but that he'd pay Bret a major 20-year contract. Basically, for the first 3 years, Bret would make something like $1.5 million a year for the first 3 years each. So he'd be taking a major pay cut to come back. Then after that, from years like 3 to 10, he would be there as kind of like, I guess like how Cena is now. He'd be there for some bigger matches. For the most part, he'd be there more as like a trainer and as a kind of like a coach. And he'd make, I believe it was $500,000 a year for that. And then the last 10 years of the contract, he'd be kind of like WWE's Babe Ruth. Bret talks about this in his book, where basically Vince McMahon wanted a Babe Ruth that would come in, wrestle once in a blue, but would really be more of like an ambassador for the company. Kind of in the role that Shawn Michaels or an Undertaker's in now, more so Undertaker, right? Undertaker comes around, he has one big match a year, and makes some press conference appearances, makes some appearances on your Jimmy Fallon's, whatever. For the most part, isn't really in the ring, and certainly isn't an agent. So, and for that, he was going to pay Bret $250,000 a year. And this is in '96 when Vince McMahon didn't give guaranteed contracts. But he did for Bret. And that's the idea that Bret signed. And Bret also got some like really lucrative things where he wouldn't have as many matches. I think he only did pay-per-views for 1996. And then didn't have any, and then eventually like went back for TVs and stuff and somehow shows. But he had less dates, and also Vince McMahon gave him creative control, which was freaking gigantic, considering that is what led to the Montreal Screwjob. Because Bret signs this contract. Bret comes back on an episode of Raw, which I cannot stress. You guys should go out of your way to check out. Look at this big match field, by the way. These guys nose to nose. Now middle fingers to nose. I love it. Bret comes back on an episode of Raw in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and they build it up as they don't know what Bret's going to say, and that's true because it was completely unscripted. They build it up like they don't know what his appearance, what he's going to say in terms of who he's going to sign with. Obviously, they wouldn't let him go out there without being signed. I believe he signed like right before that. But he goes out to address the crowd, and Vince is sitting on commentary because of the fact that he is getting nervous, and he looks really nervous, and he's gritting his teeth. And he doesn't know what's going to happen. He's like, where are we going with this? What's going to happen? He's really uneasy. And then Bret announces that, he goes out of his way. He thanks Eric Bischoff by name, calls out Eric Bischoff on Raw, says, I want to thank you for treating me with the utmost respect. But he just he says, WWF is his home. And he says that he's going to be WWF for life. And Vince McMahon does the classic, all right. And is really excited about it and looks really relieved that Bret decided to stay with WWF. So, pretty cool. Really cool, honestly. It was good stuff. So, go out of your way to check that out. That's a great, great promo. He ends up giving a little story that was real sad about his nephew, Matthew Annis, which actually in the Owen Hart documentary, they talk about how he was a young boy, about 11 years old, and passed away from some complications, got sick like super quick, and then just health deteriorated and he passed away. And on Owen's documentary, they show how Owen actually came to the ring once and mouthed the words like, we'll love you and we'll never forget you, Matthew, something to that extent. Heartbreaking stuff. Bret tells a story about how while he was doing whatever with Matthew, Matthew was in the hospital and he was recovering, and they did a story where basically Bret tells the story about how Matthew was sick, Matthew wasn't feeling well, he was not doing well, it looked like he wasn't going to survive, and Bret ended up whispering to him like, hey Matthew, if you're able to kick out here and you survive and you pull through, I'll return to WWE for SummerSlam. And he was planning to do that. And he said that when he eventually had said it, like Matthew immediately snapped out of it and got better, and it looked like he was going to actually be able to kick out, and then unfortunately didn't and passed away. So really sad. But this night here, Bret is back in WWE's good graces, and he's "Let's go, Bret" chants from the Garden, and everyone is happy, everyone is in a good mood, and all is well. And in 1 year from this time, he'd be screwed by Vince McMahon, and Montreal Screwjob would go down at Survivor Series 97. So that's crazy. Crazy to go back and look at that. All right. On the opposite side of things, as you look at Brett and Austin kind of about to turn up here, and they're kind of getting their match started here. I remember for many years saying something to the extent that I felt that this match was pretty underrated in terms of these two guys. A lot of people love the WrestleMania 13 match. I think this match is right up there with it, if not even better. I think this match is great. But what was going on with Austin at the time is they're clearly trying to get him over as one of the top new heels, right? Even Brett, and this is also something, by the way, when Brett returns in his promo, he's obviously starting to build for his match with Shawn because he thinks he's getting his rematch at WrestleMania 13. Obviously, that doesn't happen for a variety of reasons. But that's the idea, and he wants to start to build that match immediately. He thinks that's going to be just the biggest rematch ever. He thinks people are going to be really into that. So he immediately starts building that match up. And what he ends up doing is he says something like, you know, you might think Shawn Michaels is a better wrestler than me. You might think he's faster than me. You might think, you know, that he's cuter than me, and maybe he, you know, maybe I'm not the type of guy that's going to be able to pose for girly magazines. I can tell you one thing, I'm smarter than him or something like that. So he takes some jabs at Shawn to build to that. But what he also says is that he's coming back to face the best wrestler in the world because he really wanted to put Steve over and wanted to get Steve over and does. Like, he's a very underrated part of the Stone Cold character. Yes, Austin wins the King of the Ring 96. And revisionist history will have you believe that once he wins King of the Ring 96, he's the top guy. Won the case. Matter of fact, he wins King of the Ring 96. He's not even on SummerSlam 96, right? Like, he's on the pre-show against Yokozuna. So things were not going so hot for Austin right after King of the Ring 96. And I really feel like this Bret Hart feud is what puts him to that next level as like a top guy and gets him to the Austin that we eventually all know today is that Hall of Famer who's one of the biggest wrestlers in WWE history. So Austin, though, at this time, not only was he fighting with Bret Hart and having that whole deal, he also was having a situation going on with Brian Pillman. Pillman had just came to WWE and was actually built up as Austin's best friend and was someone who, like, was so over the top, so boisterous that he ended up really ticking Austin off. And if you watch, when Brett says he's coming back to face Austin, Pillman is so excited and he's jumping for joy. And Austin shoots him this look like he's just going to kill him. And then what ends up happening is the next week on like Superstars, Pillman interviews Austin because Pillman's hurt again, right? Like, he had like really got his ankle messed up and he didn't really take any time off. He kept wrestling, kept fighting in ECW. So it got infected because he was not off his feet at all. So he comes back to WWE and they really wanted him to get better so that he can be a commodity for them in the ring. So they ended up, while he was recovering, turning him into an announcer, turning him into a bit of a personality there. And on Superstars, he's interviewing Austin and says something to the extent of, like, Austin, he's talking to Austin about whatever, he's talking to Austin about this, that, and the third, and he says something like that Austin had basically, he starts talking about Bret Hart's the best there is, the best there was, whatever. And Austin gets pissed because he keeps going back and talking about Bret Hart because he feels that Pillman is taking away his interview time. So he attacks him, destroys him, lays him out, sends him to the hospital, whatever, what have you. And so what ends up happening is he returns and he does some like big thing off with Bret, right? Because they come in from Bret's house. They do a deal where they're live via satellite from Bret's house, and they're live via satellite from the WWE studios for Stone Cold. And Stone Cold's not happy about this because Stone Cold is like, you know, what the hell? Like, why is WWE going out of their way for Bret Hart? They're not going out of their way for me. And then they announce that next week they're going to have live interview with Brian Pillman from his house. And Austin's like, screw this. Like, again, you guys are going to his house through an interview? screw that, I'm going there too. And what ends up unfolding is one of the most controversial type deals. All right, I apologize to everybody. I just coughed the battle lung out. But I was able to at least turn off the mic, so you guys at least won't hear me. If you're watching along on YouTube, though, you definitely saw me, and I apologize for that. So that leads to a deal on Raw where they basically the Pillman gun angle goes down. If you haven't seen this, it's on the second or third to last episode, right before the Survivor Series builds. And it was, they did this live during Raw. It was not something they recorded beforehand. And built it up throughout the entire show. And it was one of these deals where Austin was saying he was going to go there. Vince McMahon is pleading with him not to. He's telling him that's, you know, that's breaking an entry. That's, you can't do that. And Austin's like, don't worry about it. And it's weird, too, because Austin is like, I have nothing to worry about because I know for a fact you'll bail me out because I'm such a hot commodity for you. Which is strange and odd because it's almost like he's making reference to Vince McMahon bailing Jimmy Snuka out, which is bizarre because Snuka here is back in this match, at least back on this show in the Hall of Fame. So it's weird to make that reference. That was the only like allusion he made towards it, though. So what ends up happening, though, is that Austin goes to Pillman's house. They do the gun angle. He breaks and enters. Pillman pulls out the gun. Kevin Kelly screams. Pillman's wife screams. Everyone's having a rough time with it. And they basically end up like fading to black. And I love it, by the way. And I mentioned this on Twitter at WatchWrestlePod. Go check us out. Is they end up doing a deal where right as they fade to black, it's this scary moment. Pillman's wife screams. He's got the gun. He says, what's Austin going to do? No, this is actually before Austin shows up. He said, what's Austin 316 going to do when he meets Pillman 9mm gun? And he pulls out the 9mm gun, and he's ready to shoot at Austin. He has it like shot, like as if like if someone comes through, he's got the gun ready. They fade to black. They fade up from black, and it's the Karate Fighters tournament. So it's the Karate Fighters at a later time. But it's so funny because like this big serious angle, the stuff that has like no business on PG WWE for kids television, seems completely out of left field. But they do that, and what they end up doing is they then transition into like the silliness of the Karate Fighters tournament. Though the Karate Fighters tournament does bring me back, gives me some great memories. So that was fun. So in any event, the fallout from this angle is not good. Or initially, it's fine. They don't even take it out of the West Coast feed. They don't do anything with it. They end up doing something where it's not that big a deal, and then things get real bad. People start calling for USA to cancel Raw. People are not happy about this. People are blaming USA. USA doesn't know what to do. And even though they cleared it with USA ahead of time, at least you would think that, because USA allowed it to stay in for the West Coast feed, they have to now do some major damage control between the episode. I was reading in The Observer a report about Livewire, which, for those who don't remember what Livewire is, it was a... Just give me 1 second. Basically, they ended up doing a deal where on Livewire was a live call-in show. I wish they brought it back. It was fantastic for the first year it was around. You'd have someone show up, a wrestler would be on the show. They'd show some clips here and there, but it would really be held from Stamford, Connecticut, live on Saturday mornings. And they'd have somebody show up, and people can call in. People could, I guess, send in maybe emails or letters or something like that, and be able to talk with the wrestlers on the air. And the wrestlers would most of the time be pretty out of character. It's one of the major things that got Stone Cold over on his episode of Livewire. It was really good stuff. And it was hosted by Todd Pettengill, and it was hosted by Sunny most of the time. And it was something else that Sunny was doing to kind of keep herself out there. And in the weeks that followed this Pillman deal, where they basically had no choice but to acknowledge what was going on, they had Vince McMahon and JR on the show, and Vince McMahon acknowledged that he was the owner of WWE. He basically said it was a publicity stunt that went way too far and took full responsibility for the angle, said it was tasteless, said there was no place for it in WWE, and he said WWE takes full responsibility and that USA should not have any responsibility in this pretty much damage control. They didn't want to get thrown off the USA Network, so they wanted to make sure USA wasn't getting any heat from this and accepted all the heat themselves. And Vince really took everything. Like I think they even had Pillman and Austin call in. Unfortunately, I don't think this is anywhere online. Pillman and Austin called in. I think Pillman even apologized for cursing and getting out of hand and whatever. And Vince McMahon was like, no, don't worry about it. It was tasteless. It's on me. It wasn't on him. He has no reason to apologize. And it was really kind of eye-opening because at the time, like now, if something happens, they'll just chalk it up to it's entertainment. They know, we all know it's part of the thing. 96, you know, a lot of times there wasn't really that entertainment piece. You wouldn't, you know, you would know it was entertainment, but they didn't really acknowledge that it was fake or predetermined. Like you wouldn't have, like now you have Stephanie McMahon go on there with Triple H, and they'll talk about how she's fighting Ronda Rousey. And Triple H will try to kind of build it up, and Steph will immediately say, hey, let's be honest here. Even though we have a WrestleMania match in a couple weeks, that's about that. This is entertainment, right? We love Ronda. We love having her here. She's huge for business. You wouldn't necessarily, you definitely wouldn't see that in 96. So this was some pretty big time. So Austin and Brett are now in the barricade now, and they're going at it in the crowd. It's funny, if you go back here and you watch everything going on in the crowd and in the stands, people are just super into everything going on here.
And this one is turning into a Donnybrook.
Real Donnybrook, love it.
We do that all along. And that's exactly what we're seeing here now. However, Bret Hart wants to finish it in the ring. Bret Hart unquestionably has something to prove. And for that matter, you can say the same for Stone Cold. You're fighting his time on the near side. Stone Cold will all the way out on the other side. He has to do this. He has to, right? He has to. And he better.
Gonna bail out a little. My voice has gotten much better. If you watched a couple of those wrestling potpourris, my voice kind of left for most of I couldn't even 10 minutes without coughing up a lung there. I've been battling what seems like just a terrible cough cold for a long time. Look at that. Brett into the Spanish announce table all over poor Hugo Savinovich, who had been there for many years. And look at him. He's just laying under Brett as Austin pummels him. That's great. Plenty of box of popcorn there. I wonder if these Spanish announcers got their own popcorn. They say that it seems JR seems like it always happens to the Spanish guys, and in 2018 you'd basically say the same thing. This is still way before you'd see this stuff too much, though. Wouldn't see much of this in 96 at all.
Steve Austin out here with Bret Hart now. Sets him up.
Yeah, I had gotten about, I mean, we're about, probably I'd say at least 2 hours into this show. And my voice was doing great, and I wasn't losing any of it. And then this happened, and now I'm coughing again. So. It's what it is, man. Hopefully, I'll be able to power through, and we'll get through. But if I do lay out for a little, that's kind of the reason why. Shout out to the dude in the front row. If he's watching this 22 years later, rocking that Savio shirt. Savio Vega was my absolute favorite wrestler in 96. I thought he was the coolest. From 95 to 96, there was nobody I liked more than Savio Vega. And I remember going to a show about the month or so before this for my 10th birthday. My buddy's father worked for Delta, and they had box seats for us at Delta Airlines, where basically they did a deal where they tried to get us in there, and we were in the every time they'd go to the Garden, we'd be there every single time in my friend's father's private suites at Madison Square Garden. And 96 for my birthday, my 10th birthday, we went there, and they said to me that as part of the package, they were going to give me any WWE T-shirt on the house. I can get one for free, any shirt I wanted. And they gave me a list of like 10 shirts I could choose, and I turned right around and I said, "Hey, is this Savio Vega shirt available?" And they said, "Savio Vega," and I said, "Yeah." Searched throughout the whole arena and came back and gave me the Savio Vega shirt. So I had that exact Savio shirt. It says like something in Spanish on the back, I think. Great shirt. I don't know if the chanting, I think, "Let's go Hitman." Because Vince is talking about how the crowd's really behind Brett. And I mean, rightfully so. This is Brett's big return match.
He has Stone Cold has such disdain for Bret. Fans think they're really doing something that Austin likes, and if he thinks Austin 316 signs, he could care less. Absolutely could care less.
And you hear a couple of the guys now, right? You're starting to hear the guys in the crowd. "Let's go, Austin." This is really the night where you finally started hearing, you really started hearing that male contingent in the crowd that would dominate so many WWE broadcasts with the kind of that "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks," right? Like that. Yeah, the dudes in the crowd who like they're rejecting. They love Brett. Brett's back, and that's great, but they love Austin. The huge bed sheet with the Austin 316 in the crowd that they showed. And so people are starting to really kind of get up, and you'll see a lot of this if they haven't changed the feed too much when we get to our main event. I want to let you guys listen to the commentary here while I take a pause, and I will be right back, and I will allow you guys to watch as Brett, or at least listen as Austin and Brett do their thing, listening to the commentary team of Vince McMahon and Jim Ross.
Answer the question. Suddenly arguing. Who's the better of the two?
All right, I am back there. Thank you so much for understanding. Feel a lot better. I wanted to get a little bit of that cough spray there. That was killing me. So I'm glad to be back here chatting with you guys. And we'll be tuned in now for the remainder of the show and feeling much better about it. So this is one of the better matches. This is such like peak Bret Hart here. He's pulling out everything. You know, he's dropping him on his throat on the ropes. He's pulling out a pile driver. He's pulling out different roll-ups and different technical type stuff. Really great stuff going on here, man. And no matter what he throws at Austin, Austin keeps coming back. And JR and Vince they're great here. And they've almost like and you've had this once in a while with Cole when Cole was doing his heel shtick where he dropped the crap, and that happened from time to time. And that happened a lot with JR. Oh, and he drops Bret down hard on his groin there. Sorry. Oh. Austin beating the crap. And even in 96, each chop is getting a big woo from the crowd. Look at Austin is pommeling him. And this guy, we're about probably 20 minutes into this match. Crowd is absolutely losing their mind over this. They're jumping for joy. And Austin is not losing a step here. He's flying. I mean, I'll tell you right now, Austin really changed his style after he got injured in SummerSlam 97 when Owen, did the pile driver, and unfortunately his head was in the wrong place. Austin's so freaking good here, though. He's so technically sound. He's a great freaking wrestler. I mean, he was still good. He still had great matches when he changed. I think he changed his style to much more of a brawling style just because I feel like there really wasn't as much he could do in the ring. Damn, he's freaking awesome in this match.
You're seeing this kind of contact. Where else but right here in Madison Square Garden, here in the World Wrestling Federation.
Oh, this is funny. So you heard Vince McMahon say, and the World Wrestling Federation. Look at that stunner. Crowd's like, holy crap, Austin's going to beat him. Pulls him right in the center of the ring. No. But Austin, Tim White is great. So anyway, so Vince McMahon just said, in the World Wrestling Federation, and on the kind of the closed captioning, it said, in the World Wrestling Entertainment. So weird. Tim White, you see him in the ring there. Long-time official for WWE for many, many years. And unfortunately, his referee career ended in 2002 when it was Jericho and Triple H in the Hell in a Cell when he took that bump off the apron into the cell. It was the end of his referee career. But he still does a lot of driving around for WWE today, and he's still a backstage official. You go to a lot of different autograph signings. You go to enough of them, you'll see Tim White randomly hanging out on the side, and it's because he's the guy driving the talent from that autograph signing over to the WWE show. Happens very often. I've seen him a couple of times. And it's funny, the first time I saw him, I was like, oh my God, it's Tim White. And took a photo with him. Second time, I was like, hey, it's Tim White. Now we've seen him so many times that it's awkward to keep mentioning it. Austin is throwing Brett's own sharpshooter on him.
Austin's run roughshod. He's been above authority. He's been above the law. And now Bret Hart must take the law into his own hands to survive at the Survivor.
See, so like WrestleMania match, I feel like it isn't as good as this match because of the fact that there's pinfalls in this match, right? Like, so I feel like an I Quit match, you're limited somewhat because you can't, the near fall's exciting, right? It's like, holy crap, he hit him with Stone Cold Stunner. That's put away everybody up until this point. He might have him 1, 2, Brett kicked out. Whereas with the I Quit match, especially the way they used to do them, it isn't like a tap out. Tap outs didn't really happen in 96. So it was one of these deals where, Brett, it was like you had to basically say, I quit, which wasn't going to happen, and you kind of knew that. Look at that, though, man. Such innovative crap. Austin's throwing Brett into the corner, and Brett's taking the bump right in his back there on the apron. On the corner, the ring post. You don't see stuff like that happen today. A lot of that innovative stuff from Brett you've never seen brought back. The figure 4 across the ring apron post. You don't see it brought back. Of course, the ending of this match is iconic and one of my personal favorite endings to a match you'll ever see. Because it doesn't, you don't end by somebody's finisher, right? Brett is trying to get that sharpshooter on. He can't do it. And because he can't get it on, he has to go with something else. Such a badass move, too, where Brett's head is literally here and also just drops down, bang, jawbreaker on the top of the dome of Austin.
What a competitor. that him and then Bret Hart has met his match, JR.
Oh, absolutely. Go on, I'll tell you something. I don't know.
We might very well, by the way, everybody, be back on. Oh, well, all right. So he's got the $1 Million Dream on. So he's hearkening back to when he first started as the ringmaster because he's getting desperate. He has to figure out what he can do. And then Bret jumps back, rolls back, and he gets the 1, 2, 3 there. One of the cooler endings. He caught Austin, didn't beat him straight up. And I'm not sure, and I could be wrong on this, Bret very barely ever gets the win over Austin, especially not in the big matches. Yes, Bret got the win there, but he caught him. In his match with Austin at WrestleMania 13, he gets the win only because Austin passes out. Austin does not quit. He loses too much blood, and he passes out. He was damn close both times. That's how you protect someone during a loss. Good stuff. I almost just clapped. I almost gave him an ovation. Yeah. It was very strange. So they ended up doing a deal where Bret wins the match, and they ended up making it a situation where now Bret was good. And look at Austin is just, he can't believe he lost. He felt like he had him. He felt like he had worked so hard to get it, and he's stunned he lost. Like, he can't believe Bret caught him. Look at this. She's still talking trash. So good, man. But yeah, they ended up at the very last minute making this a #1 contender match, and I think the reason for that may have been, and this is just speculation, I have no knowledge on this. The other stuff I've told you has at least been reported, mostly, from Dave Meltzer or Bret's book itself. I'm wondering if Bret had agreed to do more dates and agreed to wrestle at the next pay-per-view. And so because of that, once they got that locked in, they made this a #1 contender. I don't know if they think they needed to make it a #1 contender. But I think maybe also they ended up doing it because Bret wasn't going to be wrestling on television over the next month. He was only going to wrestle at the pay-per-view. So with that being said, they decided, all right, let's just make this a #1 contender match, and let's make it Bret against the champion. Look at Gold, the guy dressed as Goldust. Bret popped at the girl dressed as Goldust, hugging everyone. That lady had no interest in hugging Bret. I don't know if she may have a disability, but whoever that fan was had no interest in hugging Bret Hart. But so now Bret's the #1 contender, and they're already like, oh my God, are we going to get Bret and Shawn in a rematch? Look at Vince is giving him a big handshake, telling him congratulations. He's going around it. But yeah, so they're building this up, and I remember thinking when he did win, oh my God, we're definitely getting Bret Shawn. No chance are they going to be changing the title here. Please, obviously, Bret Shawn is the guy. You're not going to change the title. He walked around so long and clapped so many hands that they restarted his music.
I totally disagree with that. And with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, let's take you to Doc Hendricks. Doc, can you hear us?
I sure can, Vince. Sid.
Listen to Sid as Vince looks very annoyed at JR making that point.
Swear guard, but I think the real question is, will tonight be the night that you finally snap? Shawn Michaels has already stated that he will do anything and everything to leave Madison Square Garden still World Wrestling Federation champion.
See, Doc, you say snap, I say survive. Yeah, tonight I will do anything and everything it takes. For tonight, I know I'm the better man. And I will do anything and everything it takes. So I will walk out tonight the World Wrestling Federation champion.
All right, Vince, I guess you heard it. He is focused. Either Shawn or Sid will face Bret Hart December 15th. And if you go by the confidence in this man's eyes, Bret Hart, you better be looking for Psycho Sid.
All right. Yes, thank you very much.
Psycho said, ladies and gentlemen, the look of his eyes is he ever determined as well to be the champion.
Crowd really, really.
And, Hall of Famer, Captain Lewis Albano, ladies and
So I love the Psycho Sid character. Now I really appreciate him. Back then I was petrified of him because I was, I hear it's fake. I got to talk from my parents. Don't try this at home. I blatantly ignored it. But seeing him there is like, he's so good at his role, man. He really did make people think maybe he was a little off his rock a bit. And a lot of people, the dudes at least, loved him. He leaves Vince McMahon hanging.
You didn't see that coming? All right. You didn't see that coming. So what?
So he's over there. Another debut here. Let's listen. All right, the Nation of Domination. The start of it right here at the Survivor Series 1996. Farouk, who had been repackaged here. The idea behind Farouk, for those of you who don't know, is Ron Simmons. And Bruce Pritchard talks about it on his podcast on the Sunny episode. The thought for Farouk was going to be that he was going to come in, with that blue helmet and be that man's man type guy and be paired with Sunny. And the idea was actually going to be that the two would make out after every match. And he would basically stick his tongue down his throat at the end of every match. They brought Ron Simmons out with his wife so they could discuss it. Ron Simmons was on board. Sunny balked. She said she had no interest in Ron Simmons. She said she wasn't interested in him. So she didn't want to do that. And so they changed the entire storyline around. So when he first comes aboard, he fights with Ahmed Johnson. Ahmed gets hurt. He battles a couple of injuries. And now finally here he is there's so many iconic fans in the front row. Jesus Christ. What are they all get them together and just get them all in one row? But so this is the start of it. And you see he's coming out here with Clarence Mason and a bunch of security. That security is actually a bunch of Clarence Mason's old fraternity brothers. And you also saw PG-13 there as doing the rapping, which I thought added so much, and they weren't really around as in the Nation for very long. And this is fake Razor and fake Diesel. JR brought them aboard. Here comes Kane as fake Diesel. But in that front row, man, you've got some iconic fans. You've got Howard Stern guy. You've got the mushroom hair kid that's always, You've got Vladimir, who's leaning over the barricade so much. And this is the Vladimir show, too. He's so good in the main event. I'm excited to even just see him. All those fans, man, that you've seen a million times at wrestling shows growing up. I just wonder what happened to a lot of them. I know Mike Johnson, PW Insider, is a big fan of Vladimir, and they're like friends. He's Vader. So I know Vladimir still goes to some shows, not very much. Well, Howard Stern guy, whatever happened to him? Or the kid with the mushroom haircut? What the hell happened to him? Be some shit if we found out that the mushroom hair kid was Howard Stern guy's kid. Please don't go back and say that I said that. But Vader here, he's the captain of this team, which is clearly they're running out of time here. Let's see how much time is left here on the run card. 44 minutes, and you still have a title match, and you have 4-on-4 match. My boy Savio. soon to be joining Farouk in the Nation of Domination. But at this point, he's still... Oh, and I didn't even realize Yokozuna was still with the company at this time. I thought he was done after SummerSlam 96. I guess not. God, somebody just grabbed Yokozuna's chest. Boy, Yoke's huge here. Sad to see. But yeah, Vader, well, all right, so this is Flash Funk's debut. This entire match was built over who was going to be the mystery partner of this team. Flash Funk, you had no idea who he was. Like, he wasn't built up at all. And I feel like he would have really been benefited from some video packages about him. Why does he have the Funkettes with him? Garden crowd is groping the holy hell out of the Funkettes. How did that happen? This is obviously the former Too Cold Scorpio. You just wonder why they didn't dedicate more time to these new guys. And I remember seeing in WWF Magazine like months prior that these guys were going to be in the Survivor Series tag matches. Because remember, they put those out months in advance, so they knew he was coming in as Flash Funk, and they didn't do anything to promote him. And I've always thought Scorpio was really freaking good in the ring.
All right, ladies, and now here's the mystery partner.
Here's what I've been waiting for. Who is this guy?
I'll introduce to you the mystery partner.
And it's Superfly Jimmy Smith, which obviously now it's pretty controversial. But at the time it was a big deal. And he just got inducted into the Hall of Fame the night before, and so he's making an appearance. And he'd make a million more appearances on pretty much every independent following this. Going up till 2008, he was in WWF Royal Rumble that year. Now he's passed away. But he was inducted in the Hall of Fame the night before. And by the way, that Hall of Fame, I didn't really get into it too much before, but that Hall of Fame was a lot of fun. If you go back and at least just watch a couple minutes of it, you could see how cool it was set up with the banquet in the banquet hall and the wrestlers at every table. I don't know if it was at every table with fans. I'd like to think that. But they were there, and most of the wrestlers were in the crowd just hanging out. And then each inductee up on the stage with the person they inducted next to him, just enjoying and listening to stories, and Vince McMahon sitting right there hearing all the stories. Really, really cool. It was a really cool thing to see. This, though, to me, this was kind of like, Remember, I'm growing up when Snuka's in-ring career is pretty much done, right? Only memory I have of Snuka is, my first memory is him just getting squashed by the Undertaker at WrestleMania 7. So for me, I'm like, that was the mystery person. Like, it was one of the first times I'd remembered them building up a mystery partner since the Undertaker and Survivor Series 90. So to see this, it was kind of like, that kind of sucks. I really wish it was something else. So I wasn't blown away by it. I'm not blown away by it now. But Vader, as you look at him here, this show was supposed to be the build-up of Vader. This was actually going to be Vader's night to win the title. If you remember, he was in the SummerSlam main event. He was fighting against Shawn Michaels and pissed off Shawn. You can tell Shawn gets really upset when he's doing he gets angry when Vader blows a spot, starts shouting and yelling and kicking him. And Vader ends up doing a deal where basically Vader does a deal where they change plans and they just don't think Vader has it. Shawn's against Vader being in that spot. So Shawn turns around and petitions for it to be Sid who was just recently brought back, and is brought back to kind of do a deal where he's going to be coming back with. Where basically he's going to be returning, and he's going to be facing Michaels for the title. What's interesting about Sid is Sid was brought back to replace the Warrior in July of '96 when Warrior flamed out. But Sid had never really had a big blowout with Shawn. He turns on Shawn and then had a match with Diesel. Boy, that was brutal looking. I'm not sure what happened there with Yokozuna and Vader. Yoko was struggling, and it's so sad to see because when he was like 400, 500 pounds, he could really go. He was agile, he was having good matches, and now is doing a deal where he's basically just like way too big. It's sad to see. Because of the fact, obviously, he passed away. Just a couple years after this, actually. About 5 years later, I think he passed away.
Extraordinary for Root. What a competitor. Here comes Fraser.
Okay, JR, these are your guys. They're your proteges. I'm not the manager. You manage Vader. If I were managing these guys, they'd be doing it. If I were managing Vader, he'd be doing better. He'd probably be the champion. You couldn't manage a Wendy. Right, come on.
So in any event, the idea behind Vader was that Vader was going to win the title here. The next pay-per-view is entitled In Your House, It's Time, but Vader's not in the title picture anymore, so it makes no sense why that show is named after Vader. And then Vader was going to drop the belt back to Shawn at the Rumble. And instead, they just changed the whole plan. They gave it to Sid, and Sid got the belt here, and then they go. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the next match.
It's the SOS, and it is claimed another victim.
What's that mean?
I can't tell you, it's a secret.
Now, here you go. Here comes the big powerhouse. What do you think? Size-wise? Well, you can see situation there, but we're talking really big men with Farouk, Vader, Razor, and Diesel. Of course, taking another target almost from the size of Yokozuna. Almost as big as both. Any two men put together.
You can take anything you wanted away from the size of Yokozuna, that wouldn't help.
And you can tell what's tough about Yokozuna is you can clearly tell he's putting on all this weight to get basically to get back up the card and doing what he thought he needed to do, because all Vince is doing for this whole match is building up how big Yokozuna is.
One big move. You make a difference.
Oh, man. Man, it looks like... Crazy to think this guy wrestled yesterday. This is 96. The guy wrestled yesterday. I mean, so did Shawn, I guess. Kane's never really taken that big of a time off.
In the hands of Farouk. Farouk sets him up. How about that? Flash Funk gets quick.
Wow, look at Ron Simmons and Flash Funk go. I mean, they're bringing it right now. They're both rolling over and ooh, stiff as hell spine buster.
We'll get your attention. And here comes Vader.
And Vader's coming in to clean up the mess.
Sad here, we're looking around and Vader, Yoko, Jimmy Snuka, all unfortunately passed away. I guess you can kind of look up and down the card and see that, though.
Including me. He's the one that I have the title match tonight.
Crowd is deader than dead. So you dropped the pin, it would echo throughout. And you can't blame them. They just saw a great match with Brett and Shawn. Mystery Man ends up being Jimmy Snuka, which is like whatever. May he rest in peace. And then you have Flash Funk debuting, but like no one had known anything about him. It hasn't been reported. And they're ready to see the title match. Snuka here's got to be pretty up there, too. Let me quickly do a quick thing on Jimmy Snuka, who actually I think just passed away a year or two ago. This passed away last year.
This magnitude with no warning, no notice. We never knew it was coming. That would throw anybody off.
So actually, he's only 43. 53. Okay. So he's the same age as like Shawn Michaels was yesterday. So it's not that big of a deal that he's in the ring.
He still got it. I can't believe it, but he still got it.
Later now trying to maul Superfly Jimmy Snuka, and Snuka is in trouble.
Shout out to the Raw Opinion podcast. Let us know they really appreciated the Young Rock pick that we threw up in the promotion for our episode here.
Savio Vega loves to get his hands on Razor. Oh, look out. They go tag and Big Daddy Cool back in there.
I love that they're just referring to them as Razor and Diesel. And Razor and Big Daddy Cool. I mean, what else are they supposed to? But not like they're going to call them the fake Razor and Diesel. That would eliminate the point. I recall, and it's so I do know this match ends in a 22-year later spoiler report. This match ends in a melee and everyone gets disqualified because I think they're just like, fuck it, they're over it. I thought at least we got a Snuka dive though. Maybe we are.
And the official, we have both officials in the ring, and this is going to be tough to maintain order. Look out, here we go. Savio Vega set up for the check.
We all know that fake Razor was awful, but Kane's doing his thing here. He's not so bad. One of the things about Kane, he does not like to really talk about these older characters. There was a time once, not too long ago, a couple of years ago, he was on a radio show, and they started calling him either Fake Diesel or Isaac Yankum, and he straight up hung up on him, said he had no interest in doing the interview, and got away and left. Yeah, here's Snook is going to get his moment, his splash, and
Last night, imagine that, JR, right out here and performing at this level. It's impressive. I mean, what do you say?
And the crowd's into the Super High Splash. First time they've popped throughout this entire match. Match was short, too, I will say. And now Savio's running back out, and that's the end of this match. Yeah, not 9 minutes, 48 seconds. Crowd is pissed. I don't blame them. I hate when they do stuff like that. If they didn't have the time for the match, I feel like they should have made the time for it. And they didn't go right up to the minute. I mean, this ends here. This ends early on, so.
I don't think so. Not when Diesel brought a chair in there. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, this leading, of course, up to the championship matchup. Shawn Michaels goes one-on-one with a monster, an extraordinary contender.
Interesting.
He's focused. His name is Psycho Sid.
All right, let's listen to the build here for the main event.
WWF champion. At WrestleMania 12, Shawn Michaels' dream became reality. For 7 months, Shawn has been living the dream, while a friend and one-time nemesis was struggling with reality. In the WWF, the ruler and master is the champion. Shawn Michaels has reigned with confidence and charisma. He is fearless, flamboyant, and beloved. The challengers have been bigger, stronger.
They're showing Bulldog and Vader, Mankind.
Shawn has always persevered.
Oh,
but this time,
this is bringing me back, this package, guys.
The enemy is trust. For Sid, the enemy has always been from within. An endless struggle with sanity. With Shawn's friendship, Sid had found rationality. But as of late, a series of misunderstandings have bred contempt. And the specter of the title has fueled a psychotic desire.
You kick me right in my face. You kick me right in my face. Mistake or not, there will be no mistake in Survivor Series, my friend. What are you going to do this Sunday when I'm gunning for you? And believe me, with that chin you're sporting, I can hit it from anywhere in Madison Square Garden. You're going down the World Wrestling Federation champion.
Shawn Michaels has unleashed a psychotic monster, and this monster hungers for more than just respect. This monster has a champion's appetite.
That belt will be around my waist.
I've knocked you down before. I've knocked you down again.
Oh, this entire build package here is about the stuff of dreams for me, man. Dude, you've got Todd Pettengill, who I love, doing the voiceover. They're showing up all these great footage, all these interviews interspersed probably from the second or third shows that they do, the Superstar show and whatever, that we haven't seen already on Raw. Then they show Sid walking through the halls of Madison Square Garden. You have every big WWE music for old school packages. That dum dum. They even do the dum 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 as they show Sid in the back. The iconic Madison Square Garden entrance ramp. The doors opening up. Sid's coming out. He's looking freaking badass. This is marking out, I guess would be the expression, right? Or look at this. He's screaming, "Who's mad?" Crowd's into it. Crowd's jumping for joy, leaping up, pounding Sid. Sid's ready to go. He's amped up. Looking like he's got the face of a guy. That people always say that Strowman had the face of a guy. He's yelling at Vladimir, "Who's the man?" Vladimir's yelling back, "You're the man, baby. You're the man." This is incredible. Every single piece of this is everything I really loved about mid-90s WWF. Can't ask for better to start off this match. I don't even care if the match is complete trash. Watching this show has been worth it for me for this moment right here. Freaking great.
Suddenly I'm dominant.
Wow, is that? Wow, is that what Sid stood for? Suddenly I'm dominant? I don't recall that being what Sid stood for, but that's what JR just said. Crowd is just loving him. Now keep in mind, Sid is not necessarily a heel here. He and Shawn were kind of teetering on the edge of breaking up, but it was, in building up to this, Shawn kept, oh, look at this. The producer telling Shawn, "Are you ready?" Banging on his door. He's coming through the hollowed halls of Madison Square Garden. Crowd already booing. Shawn jumping and getting ready to head out there. Are you going to get a shot of the gorilla position?
He gives it every bit of his food. And you really mean that too, don't you? Yeah, no, I'm serious. Well, there's an ounce of energy.
You can tell that, like, JR is pissed off Vince. All the ladies love the HBK and the kids. And killed the whole boyhood dream thing with the nonstop having the manager. The super sock Jose Lothario, God bless him, killed the idea. Lady is not letting go of Shawn Michaels to the point that the security had to come out. He has a rose. Somebody gave him a rose. He just kissed a fan. I'm not sure if that's his wife. It might be. But, I mean, there's nothing you can like about the guy. Looking at him now. And actually, on the Major Brothers, the Major Figure podcast that Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins do, Zack talks about how he was at this show in Shawn Michaels gear, and by the end of the match, he said, "Screw it," took off the hat, threw it to the ground, and got on his knee to do the hand deal with Sid. And I remember being a kid watching this match, loving everything about Shawn Michaels. He was my guy. I had accepted him as my new guy over Bret Hart, who was my old guy. and was crushed. And my father was having none of it. He was loving every minute of Sid winning this match and everything about Sid. But man, this is 90s nostalgia at its absolute best here. Shawn with the incredibly inappropriate dance moves, shaking his groin all over the place as Vince McMahon cackles with laughter. But yeah, Sid is not necessarily a heel. They had not completed the heel turn here. And something that's really interesting, I had talked about on my Twitter. Sid reminds me a lot of Braun Strowman. Braun was, earlier this year, was the guy everyone wanted to get behind with the get these hands, and he was a little out there, and he was a little crazy, but everyone loved him. And people just thought he was the greatest. People thought he was awesome. People thought he was their next hand-picked guy. And they didn't want that. So they turned him heel to go against the Shield. And nobody wanted to boo him. So people still cheered Braun for the most part. Similar here to Sid. Sid is a guy who is he was like your secondary type of babyface, and he was crazy. And the whole story here is that the storyline they're telling is that Sid had to go away for a while to an insane asylum, and Shawn Michaels is the one who got him out. And Shawn kept referring to it as the loony bin. And we had to go and get Sid out of the back. And I think the problem with Shawn here, if I'm being honest, back in the day, is that he is listen to the crowd just screaming in adulation with every punch that Sid throws. Every time he knocks Michaels down, you hear that roar from the male contingent, I guess, in the crowd. But revisionist history is that Sid is a heel. Sid is not a heel yet. They were building the story of eventually him just completely losing his mind and becoming a heel. And going into this show, these guys were even in a tag match together, going for the tag titles. And it was Shawn who kept having these little things here and there where one show, Owen and Bulldog ended up hitting Sid with a chair. And then Sid got knocked out when he turned around. Shawn was holding the chair because he picked up the chair after running off the Bulldog and Owen. But it looked like he hit him. Another one, they're battling it out with Bulldog and Owen. He pulled back the shoulder to go hit one of the Bulldog or Owen and clocked Sid with his elbow. So it was all these different types of miscommunications that were causing an issue between the two. Such a slick nip up from HBK. And you hear it. This is very early, as I said earlier, that let's go Cena. Cena sucks. You're getting that loud, yeah, Shawn, from the kids and the ladies in the crowd. And then every time Sid hits him, it's, yeah. Odd that they're saying that Michaels can't win and he ends up losing. I'll talk to you guys about, with Sid winning, what Meltzer had to say about this in the Observer, because this was the lead story of the Observer. Psycho said Cap.
Do not allow yourself to get in the position to be powerbombed. Yes, indeed. Jose Lothario has cleared Shawn Michaels as well. Did you ever see Jose in his prime? Did you ever personally see Jose wrestle in his prime? I did. No, unfortunately, I did not. Here we go.
Although Vince McMahon's never seen Jose Lothario wrestle in his prime, then why the hell is he here as Shawn Michaels' mentor? Weird. In any event, Dave Meltzer would say, Psycho Sid captured the WWF title to headline 1996 Survivor Series on 11/17 at Madison Square Garden, beating Shawn Michaels in a match much better than anyone had the right to expect. Title chain builds up Sid versus Bret Hart title match for WWE's next pay-per-view called the It's About Time. It actually wasn't. It was called It's Time, but I don't know if that's just a typo or if there was a change. The apparent plan, subject to change, of course, is that Hart is going to win the title at that show, and more likely than not, the long-term plan is still for Hart Michaels at WrestleMania after Royal Rumble tease, where apparently they'd have Michaels, Austin, and Sid all positioned as potential winners and getting the big WrestleMania title shot. Obviously, that didn't happen. Wow, but that's crazy. That was the plan. Exactly if or when plans changed in regard to what appears to be a speeding up of the process of getting the title to Hart is unknown. Originally, Michaels was scheduled to lose the title at Survivor Series to Vader. When the plans were changed to replace Vader with Sid, note from me here as I read this, a bummer because Vader was starting to make appearances on Boy Meets World. Some really underrated appearances, and I thought if he was champ, it would have been even cooler. When the plans changed to replace Vader with Sid, it's unknown whether the title change part of the plan went with it or if the plan was changed during the last week, as just before the event, the word was out that Sid would win the title, then lose it to Hart. However, in WCW-like fashion, WWF ran promos for upcoming house show in this area on 110 in San Jose that must have been shot within the past few days, but started running the night after Sid won the title, billing Michaels versus Mankind for the main event of that show, with Michaels defending the title and with Hart as challenging Hunter Hearst Helmsley for the Intercontinental Championship. Obviously, if Hart will be champion on that night, it wouldn't be mentioned in local promos. However, if Michaels wasn't to be champion at this point, the promos were going to air. One would think they'd cut the promos billing Sid's match as the title match if it had been planned earlier than the last minute. Of course, it could just be a 90s deal where everything has to be kept secret from the people working in the company. Thereby, the promos are screwed up, which is still obviously the way it is today. So promos are screwed up by the time they air. If Hart is going to win the title the next month, it seems like rushing a process that could be very lucrative being teased. But that has always been WWF style when it comes to creating a superhero on top as champion, dating back to the beginnings of the promotion in the 60s to just put the belt on him quickly rather than doing the lengthy tease before making the switch. Interesting stuff there, because that's obviously not what happened. Sid would keep the title until the Rumble. Shawn would come back in his hometown of San Antonio, at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, and win the title, beating Sid and winning the title back. And in doing so, Bret Hart would actually be in that Rumble spot, not with Sid in Austin, but with Austin, Vader, and Undertaker, leading to the Final Four deal, with them all being potential people, with the idea being Bret was going to win the title. Bret would challenge Shawn for the title at WrestleMania. Of course, Shawn loses his smile, and it screwed up everything, but it's interesting to hear that that's what Dave thought that things were heading towards the, at least by the time the It's Time pay-per-view rolled around. Also crazy that promos were building up Bret Hart going for the Intercontinental title. At this point in his career, Bret seems way past the Intercontinental title. Oh, Sid got pissed. He banged into the cameraman and pushed the cameraman down the steps. Thankfully, he didn't fall. That could have been real bad. JR talking about mixed bag. There really isn't anything wrong with the crowd cheering for Sid because he was also still a face at this time. But now it seems like there's just muffled crowd noise. I don't know if that's true WWF's point or the crowd kind of getting a little tired. So Meltzer would give the best match of the evening, obviously, to Bret and Austin, giving it 4.5 stars. But he did give this one 3 3/4, which was a lot. So obviously the story here is, and that we'll see here in a few, and hopefully you guys haven't, I'm not spoiling anything for you. Sid's going to win the title based upon Jose Lothario having a quote-unquote heart attack. And Meltzer would say the only negative about this show is that I thought it was really tacky to have a 62-year-old man do a fake heart attack as an angle. Wow, so Jose Lothario is 84, still living. Good for him. Do a fake heart attack as an angle, even though it was a way for Michaels to save face while dropping the title. At the very least, they should have gone off the air with some sign saying that he wasn't going to die. They basically went off the air with the idea that he might die. Granted, this is all work, and old men have heart attacks on soaps all the time, But as the USA Network said, when mixing certain things out of the Pillman angle, it purports to be too real. My feeling is that an injury angle is fine, but doing something to purport to a real-life threatening and then leaving the air with it made it seem like it come off as a sleazy way to try and spike a television rating for the next night. On the live Raw, they really didn't answer any question as to Lothario's condition, other than to tease throughout the show that Michaels might be on when he wasn't, blaming it on Lothario's condition, which they said was a possible cardiac arrest. That's insane. But also said that he refused medical attention the previous night. Since when does someone with a heart attack refuse medical attention? That's what Dave says, and gotta agree with him. Man, Sid loves Vladimir the Fan. He's gone to him at least 3 times already. By the way, Vladimir's that guy with the glasses, muscle shirt. You would know him if you've seen him. The other bad part about it is upping the ante with desensitizing fans, which is being upped tremendously by the week, to where even the most drastic angle won't have much of an effect. Basically, they did the gun angle, and a week later, nobody cared, and the angle was basically dropped. This time, they do a fake heart attack, and for the most part, nobody even cared when it was going on, nor was there any evidence or concern in the crowd, either live that day or on television the next night. Partly because Lothario wasn't over, and also because angles have been hot-shotted to death, so that even near death doesn't make fans care anymore. Well, I definitely think Dave's point about Lothario not being over is true. I think he definitely brought down the Michaels point. Some of the fans didn't care. They were too busy celebrating the Sid win. No, they did not care. They were super stoked. They couldn't have cared any less. So that's pretty crazy.
Shawn Michaels came down very, very hard on his hip.
That's crazy. And we are now, by the way, just finishing up here in the final 10 minutes of this show. So I wanted to touch base with you guys here. Just say thank you so much for checking us out here on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. If you guys have checked me out, obviously I know it's a big night for a lot of fans here with the Daniel Cormier stuff going on, UFC, big fight right here in New York City. I am going out in a bit to watch that show. So if you utilize this show as a way to, as you're getting ready to go get prepared and grabbing a couple drinks and doing whatever you got to do to get prepared for that show, thanks again. Thank you so much for doing that. If anything goes down on the Daniel Cormier front in regards to Brock Lesnar, I will be back to chat with you guys about that tonight on the Wrestling Potpourri, which is on this same page. Just kind of a deal. I'd talk about a variety of different things going on in the world of pro wrestling. Man, now the crowd's behind Sid. All right, here we go. Sid caught Michaels on that, and Sid just demolished him. Great stuff. Sid catches him, and the crowd just fucking lost their shit. Like, they for sure think that Shawn is going to beat Sid here. And I think that's why everyone gets so crazy, because Shawn's really being pushed as that John Cena type, top of the card type guy. His boyhood dream, he's outlasting everyone. He's overcoming the odds consistently. And I think people weren't really maybe not liking Shawn as much. And I think that partially has to do with the fact that, behind the scenes, he'd be the first to tell you that he was coming off as a douche to everybody. He's doing it during his matches. He can't even keep his cool. He's yelling at Vader. He's doing whatever. And I think part of that was coming out in his promo work when he's supposed to be this lovable babyface. He's coming off a bit abrasive and a bit like a douche. And really, when he comes back and that builds to Royal Rumble, he continues this. I don't think Shawn comes across really too likable at all in the build towards that match. Granted, that match now takes place in his hometown, so he's basically a conquering hero. But I definitely think that he was struggling to be a likable guy in the midst of, not being the most likable guy. And now the crowd is solidly behind, so they're booing every single Shawn Michaels. Every Shawn Michaels. This is like this atmosphere is crazy. You can hear the guys' boo is just draining out all the crowd cheering. It says, of course, only on the network. It says crowd cheering on the closed captioning. Unbelievable sell job by Shawn Michaels. Comes off the top with an axe handle. Sid gets the boot up. Shawn flips back over onto his head, lays there on his head, standing upright, basically on his head, and then flips back over the other way. Man, there's nobody who sells like Shawn Michaels. Jeez, that's something, man. JR harkening back to Stone Cold, putting this $1 Million Dream in, and basically saying, now that Sid's doing it, man, Earl Hebner. It's a shame what happened with him. He was so great as your guy, your top referee doing his thing. I mean, Kyoto does his thing too, but I always liked Earl. Listen to the roar of the crowd as Sid catches him for what looks like the choke slam. Sid catches the crowd losing their mind. Wow, this is incredible. Crowd wants no part in HBK's title run here. Shawn is... They thought it was over. Crowd was doing the no, no, no as Shawn was getting ready to do the big super kick. And then when Sid caught his leg and turned it into the choke slam, people just erupted. Erupted. Vladimir has not sat down, I don't think, the whole entire match. He's been screaming for Sid. Going nuts. Saying it's over. Taking way too long to set up the powerbomb, though. Great false finish on the small package. That could have ended it. Would have been totally believable, too. This has been great. I mean, I knew the Brett and Shawn match was great. I have totally forgotten how great the Sid and Shawn Michaels main event is. I always knew the crowd made it better, and it definitely does, but this is a great, great match. Way better than their return match at Rumble 97. Sid underrated, man. Sid did his thing. A double main eventer at the WrestleMania, by the way, Psycho Sid. Ah, oh, Sid destroyed. This is, you got to go back and watch this match. If you have not done so, go back and watch Shawn Michaels versus Psycho Sid at Survivor Series 1996. Sid powers out of the apron, of the corner, hits him with a clothesline, which knocks Michaels down. As he does it, the males in the crowd jump to their feet in excitement, almost like charging Sid on. This is something to watch. This is fun, man. Even Vince McMahon is like, hey, shit, this is what you're getting in WWF. Wow, he pulls the camera out of the cameraman's hand, and the camera was still on when he did it first. So the first thing you saw was like Sid coming close. Crowd erupts when Sid. Oh, I remember thinking that was it. I remember as a kid yelling, forget Super Sock. Just pin him. Just pin him. Crowd is booing. They do not want Shawn to win, and they can't give a damn about Super Sock. When he nails Super Sock, they freaking cheers. Shawn can't do it. He can't act like, do something, you idiot, as he's yelling, talking. I understand he's upset. He's saying it's over. Ah, they really are. They are teasing the heart attack. Pretty terrible. This is really the product of a New York City crowd. Like, I don't recall Sid being this hot of a character going into this show, but my word. Oh, look at this. The ref's down, and now the freaking guys right there doing goggles into the camera. A grown man, too, probably like in his 50s. You would hope he's not having a heart attack. They didn't even send anyone down to help him. No one in the back would give a shit if someone was having a heart attack. Good God. Listen to the anticipation in the crowd. They're like, oh my God, Sid's going to do it. Let's listen to the end of this here. I'll let you go. I'll get out of this. As Sid's got him up for the powerbomb and the crowd is getting ready to explode. Crazy shit, man. Wow. The celebration. The crowd chanting 1, 2, 3 for the lovable babyface in '96. I mean, now that at least the medics have come to help Jose Lothario. Crowd is so amped. Vladimir. This is a great moment. If you focus on Vladimir, who's obviously a favorite of mine, as Sid's getting the cover, Vladimir is perched like this on top of a lady doing the big 1, 2, and 3 with the crowd. Remember, this guy just like hit an old man and almost it caused him maybe to have a heart attack. Nobody could care about Jose. And as he's doing it, the girl in front of Vladimir is screaming, "No! No!" And Sid obviously gets the win, and Vladimir just pumps his fist, pointing to the air. And there's an iconic moment coming up with Sid and Vladimir as he walks away with the belt. Obviously, the story being that Sean was too distraught by Jose Lothario to focus on the match. Wow. I'll tell you, a really great main event. I love the hell out of this main event. If you couldn't tell, I mean, the Brett and Shaw match, the Brett and Austin match I knew was great. This main event was so much fun. I'm like ready to freaking go crazy for DC tonight now. Now I'm in a great freaking mood. Well, it was great to chat with you guys. Thanks for checking us out here on the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. Great to be back here with you guys. We will be back next week. Make sure you vote on the poll. I'm going to put up the choices. Survivor Series 2002, Survivor Series 2011, Survivor Series 2013. Live reviews of all 3. Sid is so happy as he's won the belt. He's yelling at the crowd. The crowd's yelling back at him. He's fist pumping all over, which is so great. Like, I don't even think it's part of the Sid character. But like, if he's so psycho that he hasn't even realized he just maybe caused an old man a heart attack, but he can't even care because he's so happy. The girl who Vladimir was, oh, that's not that same girl. Vladimir is hugging Sid. They're hugging, they're embracing. He's so happy. What a fucking great fan. Wow, what a great show. Survivor Series 2002, 2011, 2013. Vote on the poll on Twitter at WatchWrestlePod. It'd be great to have some great feedback on that. Whichever one of those 3 shows wins the wins the poll, we'll cover next Saturday morning. Bright and early, Saturday morning. Got to wake up early with me next Saturday. We will cover that show. Whichever one does not, we will cover on the following week. The one that finishes in second place. So we'll get to 2 of those 3 as we continue the build to Survivor Series 2018. Hopefully these will be great hype pieces for you guys. That was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun with that. I hope you guys did too. Until next time, everybody, this has been Tommy on the Spot for the Watchalong Wrestling Podcast. If anything happens tonight with Brock Lesnar on UFC, I'll be back with you guys to chat about it on the same YouTube channel. If you like what you see, smash that subscribe button. Thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate it, and we'll talk again real soon. Want to follow me on Twitter, at WatchWrestlePod or at Tommy on the Spot. Until next time, everybody, have a great night. If you're watching, enjoy UFC 230.